with MarineLord being able to actually communicate with someone in in his native language, this did show a significant difference in play. We've been memeing MarineLord that he doesn't speak English, and it's been an hilarious meme. But honestly, the way Alyona played, I am questioning myself whether MarineLord has been speaking English to any of his other teammates, because Alyona played like he was MarineLord. The amount of movements you saw from Alyona, the amount of consistency in raids and how he split his units, it was amazing. Alyona is really showing us that he knows how to execute. You just need to guide him a little bit and be that little voice at the back of his head saying, hey, do those 658 things at the speed of light, and he can execute them. But now Baltoon, or Baltuna, as we can see on the screen, he is a man who is not performing at the top of the top in one-on-one tournaments. He hasn't made it to any of the big tournaments and the top 4, but he's been growing steadily, and he's had a lot more high-performing results than Alyona. So Baltoon definitely the guy who's favored to take the series. A lot of what I saw in the chat as well, people saying that Baltoon has a chance to 5-0 this one. And yes, he does. But after watching Alyona play last week, I don't think it's going to be that easy. And honestly, if Alyona can take 4 games, which is a lot, this could be a whole very short day for this tournament. And I really hope Baltoon puts up a big fight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'd be scared of playing Baltoon in a 1v1 situation. Obviously, I'd be scared to be playing against any of them, but Baltuna specifically because, you know, I've watched his climb,
Yeah.
and the ability for him to play with some of the best. And you see him on ladder every once in a while. He's a really avid team game player too. He's just somebody that you can tell he loves the game, right? And he puts a lot of heart into it. He puts a lot of passion. And I think anybody going up against Baltoon, you're in for quite a time. And I think he might have gotten a little bit of an advantage for the first map pick in terms of the drafts. Baltuna going with the Delhi, Eliona with the Malians.
Yeah, no, I think this is banned from these sides. We've seen very consistently banned throughout the tournament. We see Byzantines and HRE getting banned. So with Delhi and Malians on Dry Arabia, we're seeing something familiar. And now the question is Delhi going to be able to actually take the win on this one? Because we saw what China did the previous game.
For the Delhi, and I think what's proving to be a little bit difficult. Oh my God, that's a random beastie in the back. Happy birthday, buddy. Can he hear me? Hello?
Wait, let me give it to him. Tim wants to send you a message.
Hello?
Beastie, hello?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that you have a very happy birthday, my friend. And I know that this game is starting, so what are you doing? Go coach your boy.
I am.
Get out there.
I asked Baltoon, do you know the build order for that? He said yes. I said, okay, I'm gonna go make coffee and get some snacks. Thank you so much for the happy birthday, though.
Absolutely. Everybody get yourself a little bit of snackies and a Steel Series alias microphone if you do not have one already. As Eliona is going to be playing as the Malians in the color blue. And Baltoon going to be playing as the color red, as the Delhi Sultanate. So we talked about the matchup a little bit. Baltoon obviously has the idea of what the Delhi build order is, and he does. Right? With the mosque, with the mill, you're going to be able to get wheelbarrow first. You get efficient production first, which really helps you, especially in this matchup, because you want to get a bunch of feudal age units, and efficient production is going to help you do that.
I think with the amount of units that Delhi can pop out, Malians just struggles to target fight him. I saw that in the chat as well. Why is this an easy matchup? I think Malians is used to being able to take care of units pretty easily and be on the whole map as control. But with the amount of units that Delhi can pump out and how quickly they can get them out, they stop Malians from getting that snowball that they're so used to getting so easily. So Delhi is just a civilization that can punish you, and that's exactly what we're going to be seeing here from the boys. But again, Alyona does have MarineLord in his ear, so Baltoon might need to think a lot harder about this. Because if you're a Baltoon and you're playing against MarineLord, it's not going to be an easy matchup, even if you are favored right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if Eliona has the potential to execute what his coach is telling him to do, right? That turns into be a very good idea. Now, take a look at Eliona's spawn as we're getting both of these players up to feudal age. We're talking about MarineLord having MarineLord spawns. That gold in the back is going to be pretty nice, right? But his second gold, I think he's got one on the west side, which might be a secondary pit mine. He has an ability to put his cattle ranches a little bit in the back as well. I kind of like it. Baltoon has some berries in the front, not exactly for the Malians to get aggressive, but in terms of spawns, you know, Eliona definitely is favored here.
Now, thinking about Aliona's game plan here, looking at those spawns, we can see his gold is a little bit in a very questionable position there, the second one. He's got a one all the way at the back there in China, but I think Aliona is going to struggle getting a second gold set up, especially with Ghazi Raiders being the play here pretty early on.
Yeah, I mean, for the deli, it's kind of cut and dry for what happens in feudal nowadays. It used to be crazy with the Tower of Victory, right? Getting the plus attack speed on all of your foot soldiers was really good. But the thing of it is, because most of the time you're going for a Ghazi heavy composition to start, you really don't lose that much from the Tower of Victory. And the Dome of the Faith having all of those scholars creating now a second think tank for them to get all of these technologies proves to be very effective. And we know that there's the healing potential there. I don't know if you remember Whamen, but way back in probably like season 3/4-ish, the Delhi Sultanate, the scholars that they had, their healing was insane to the point where you could have a spear up against the Ghazi and the Ghazi just gets healed and the spearman goes down. Now in feudal, even though you do get a lot of scholars, it's not as powerful, but it still has potential.
I remember Delhi armies being completely unkillable, and I'm really glad that was the end of that era, because that was worse than just watching the machine gun springles take down your whole army. So Delhi doesn't have that power that they used to with the invincible units, but they do have those elephants that get quite hard to kill. And I think in the most recent patch they did try to address this, but elephants are still quite a bit of a problem for a lot of people early on. But now let's see how Aliona transitions up differently from Beastie's team's game last time. Because now we saw what Beastie's team did on Marlians is it was very aggressive, there was no cow boom in sight, but is Aliona going to be able to do the same? Or what does Aliona have up his sleeve? Is he just going to try and defend from this early aggression? We do see the villager heading towards the gold already, trying to get... Ooh, I was going to say, trying to get that second gold pit mined, but it looks like he has changed direction. So we'll see if he does get that second gold or if it's just going to be going straight for the face with scouts instead. But scouts are a pretty good choice here, I would say. Especially with going professional scouts, he's going to be able to get as much of the food sources as possible that Delhi usually gets for free.
Yep, you're exactly right. And we talked about the Malians and their warrior scouts, right? In the last series, and those warrior scouts are now going to be out. Obviously, the stable going to give you that too. But if you're going to have some fights for these deer packs for professional scouts, you're going to want a warrior scout, right? Because of their ability and how much damage that they can do to another scout. And they can hold their own against other things, you know, against the Ghazi or something like that. They're not going to completely crumble. So that's very effective for you. He's going for more of a disruption tactic. Dragovon in the last series was going a more of, I'm going to just dent you in and win this game kind of tactic. And honestly, as far as what Eliona is going for, I like his approach a lot more because the Malians, that aggressive feudal, it's really just not there too much.
And he's adjusted to this already. We can see the wood that he would have gotten overmined on. He spent on resources here. And with those scouts bringing the boys back home, it gets scouted pretty instantly. And these Ghazi Raiders are going to tell them to stop. You know, the first Donzo does come out, but it will take quite a bit of damage. And this is one of those strange timings where you can actually take the Donzos pretty early on. And shutting down these scouts, this is going to be so valuable for him because you don't want to let them have all that food. We saw what Malians can do when they have food. He needs to make sure that this gets cut off right now.
Yeah, definitely in the beginning, Whamen, you're absolutely right, because Baltoon went for horticulture first, excuse me, so he does have that food gathering rate that's a little bit increased, and then he went for professional scouts afterward. So Baltoon does not have the ability to get these deer right now. If you can stop your opponent from getting them by a little idle time, Eliona quick with that trigger on the town center pulling his villagers. Now he's got to be more defensive. It's usually for Deli being like, hey, I'm going to get your deer. I'm going to get all this stuff, and it's going to be this impenetrable force that you can't deal with. Eliona's like, well, I'm going to take a couple deer off the map before you could do something about it.
And just stopping that professional scouts on the map is going to cause Eliona's pump to be so much less powerful because this man needs the food. And we can see that with the Donzos, and he's not making any more scouts or anything out of his stable, which you need to be active on the map. Now, Baltoon, he shouldn't trade these badly either, because the thing is, these scouts, they do pretty good damage. And you can see here he's going to lose a scholar, which is an amazing pickup, thinking that it's just the scout that took that down. And these guys are going to be able to go home, heal up, and do this again. Now, you have to ask yourself, what is Deli going to be doing later on that I can counter? And now that he knows that you've gone for professional scouts, he's going to do the same. And we see that coming out of Baltoon now. He's going to go for professional scouts himself. And if you see those scouts moving around the map, he is most likely going to be able to bring a deer or two back, but they need to be stopped pretty quickly.
Yeah, you know, those warrior scouts going back to them, their healing is rather impressive. I think before they go out to get those deer, they must have packed a lunch. But having the ability, you know, for the warrior scouts to heal like this, you know, Deli needs scholars and all this kind of stuff. The warrior scout just does it automatically, right? So having that ability is really, really important, especially if you're going to take a small engagement, you're going to get deer. You're probably going to get hurt from trying to get deer with professional scouts. So you could just heal up really, really quickly while you're going to get the next one. Baltoon adding in archers as a Deli Sultan. Obviously, if you're putting in Ghazis, archers are usually the second to follow. And I really like what Eliona's doing in terms of his composition. He's making a little bit of everything. We didn't see feudal age sofas come out for Dragavon in the last series. Now we're going to see a little bit of them, and sofas look pretty good in this spot with those archers and the Ghazis there.
Oh, definitely. The Ghazis, they do pretty well against armored units, but not that well. And this was not the greatest trade here. He did sacrifice a lot of those Ghazis just to get down the Donzos, but it does look like it's going to pay off here for Mr. Baltoon. It already looks like Baltoon's army is going to be unkillable, actually. I'm not sure how Yona is going to shut this down. Those Sofas are going to need to be aggressive. They're going to need to flank and do damage from behind, because this mass is already looking very scary. These Donzos, picking them off one by one, is critical. And that's exactly what he's able to do.
And when you're playing as the Deli Sultanate too, as we watch that army get wrapped up, how important it is to have a good first engagement. Because, Whamen, do you know what happens when you have a good first engagement as the Deli Sultanate?
I think you start packing a snowball, right? You
You're
take the little
packing the
crumbs of
snow.
snow.
Exactly. You're making a snowball, right? You got the right units. You're packing it up real nice. Efficient Production's helping you do that. I'm on a roll now. You got the snowball going. You're starting to roll it downhill with that good first engagement. And now for the Deli Sultan, as he's getting the sacred sites and all of that, this snowball is going to turn into an avalanche.
And do you see that avalanche forming right now? Do you see the amount of archers in front of him? I do think there's a little bit of an misunderstanding here from Baltoon. He needs to keep making units to keep that avalanche going, though. And Alyona keeps making sofas. I don't know, 9 sofas is kind of scary, even when you do have an army advantage. Because keep in mind, even though that count says 38, 11 of those are scholars, and they are nowhere close to being part of this fight.
Yeah, you know what I think is advantageous for Baltoon? Because of all of those scholars, if he does pull them out and get a heal, he might be able to make this unstoppable healing force if he gets them all. He had 3 sacred sites for a pretty decent amount of time, which is going to help you out. And a lot of the times for the Deli Sultan, especially even in this instance, as he finds that pit mine to the north, those sacred sites might end up being a means to the end. You know, he's obviously not going for the sacred site victory, right? He's not trying to end the game in 10 minutes. But what he can do is use some of that gold stockpile that he has, continue to gather the food that he has. All of a sudden, he's Castle Age, and the Malians are nowhere near it.
And I don't see that Cal Boom looking good at all. We do see Albiona, though, making the best of it. He's making sure that he gets every bit of raid as he can. And those sofas have already picked up quite a bit. And they might get another victim. Another one does go down. And these sofas have been quite annoying. But we do see Ball2 now getting ready to go to castle, getting the House of Learning, making sure everybody goes to school. Because if you have 11 scholars, you want them to help people study.
Oh, yeah, that's I use this analogy in Dark Age, but that is a think tank right there. That House of Learning, getting all of those technologies. Now we're looking at Eliona, rather void of cows, and Cow, our observer, is probably not very happy. He hasn't seen any of his brothers and sisters in now the second Malian game. Hopefully he has the potential to do that, but that's the problem with the Malians as he's shaking the screen in frustration. That's the problem with the Malians is you're spending all of your resources on making units to try to keep up with Delhi. Now you have to build these cattle ranches and you're trying to boom and all of this kind of stuff. And you weren't set up for it earlier, you know? So it's interesting because you try to stop the Delhi from getting the sacred sites. You try to get that good first engagement. And he sacrificed his cattle ranches, or lack thereof, to do that. He didn't get that engagement. So now what does he do?
The problem is he can still do some damage. Baltoon needs to be careful here. This is probably the weakest Baltoon will be for a long time. So this is the only chance that Alyona has in doing some actual damage, and he knows it. He's going straight across the map. He knows that this is the time I can engage where Delhi doesn't have those upgrades. Delhi takes a very long time to get those upgrades, and I need to stop them before they become a problem. You can see there a minute left on most of those. So he's trying to find that damage while he has that opportunity. Baltoon, on the other hand, he's going Lancers, and I think this is the perfect choice for him in controlling the pace of this game. The archers are doing an okay job against these sofas, but they need to be careful here. I think just seeing that small fight, you can already see this is going to be a really tough fight for Alyona, but I don't think Baltoon is going to take it this early. He knows he needs to back off. He needs to use that Castle Age upgrades that he is getting. And Alyona, he's just making more units. You guys can see the Musafadis in queue. He knows I'm going to be dealing with these very armored units that I can't do anything against. Ghazi's taking a little bit of damage. Archers trying to kite back. They do get a sofa, and you don't often see archers killing sofas.
Yeah, especially in the feudal age, as the sofas trying to get a little bit of a surround on those archers. The veteran upgrades do come in, so those archers will be able to pack a little bit of a punch. But remember, those Malian sofas, because they're in feudal age, no imported armor. They can't get a way to get that increased melee armor and ranged armor. So the archers are going to prove to be a little effective. Now with these Musafati, the Malians can kind of hang just a little bit of time in feudal age when their opponent is castle age, just because of the fact that those Musafatis exist, right? But because Baltoon has as many archers and he's continuing to make them, they're of the veteran status. He's getting all of the blacksmith upgrades that he needs, and he's getting them for free, right? They could even, these veteran archers at 7+2, they can even rip through a feudal age javelin thrower. I don't think they're that scared of them.
And honestly, it looks like that's the case. Look at that javelin thrower taking so much damage. The scholars being behind, taking care of their injured archers here at the back, but javelin thrower is still doing some decent trades. These Lancers and Ghazis are just taking care of every single bit of reinforcement, because when your units get made in your base, you know that your army is going to grow in your base, and his isn't. So Baltoon, he needs to be careful here. He cannot take too much damage, but at the same time, Alyona is bleeding units there at the back. So let's see if Baltoon can capitalize on this split army here. But he needs to be careful again. He cannot engage on these and take an unfavorable trade. But we do now see all those important upgrades that he needed. They are already through. So Baltoon, this is probably his fight to win the game with.
Yeah, and you got to remember, too, with the Malians, those javelin throwers are pretty slow, right? It's much like longbowmen for the English. If you get them in harm's way, it's going to be very difficult to come back, right? And try to make sure that you're in a better situation. Those javelin throwers and that Malian army ends up scurrying away just a little bit. But again, not really doing any damage. He's looking to kill some villagers. He's looking to try to raid himself back into the game. Not going to be the case. As Baltoon's trying to pick up these relics, veteran archers are making light work of a lot of these Musafatis and Donzos that are out there. As long as those Ghazi raiders, as long as those knights end up staying alive, the Donzos get cleaned up, this is time for Baltoon to really take that military advantage in that lead.
And Alyona is doing an amazing job at trying to bait these out into the wrong directions. The archers now, they're just doing too much of a good job here against these sofas. These sofas are supposed to destroy them, but they are able to just one-shot them now. The Ghazi Raiders trying to do their best, archers target firing the Donzos, making sure that they cannot get the damage done to those Lancers and the Ghazis. And this looks like it's going to be a pretty good cleanup here for Baltoon. Alyona still making units, still desperately trying to get these to run forward and do some damage, but it looks like the writing's on the wall, Tim. Alyona is not going to be taking down Baltoon in this first game.
No, I mean, that military advantage. Oh my God, Whamen, you're so good at this. As soon as she finished the sentence, the match is completed. This woman's unbelievable. 1-0 for a Baltoon to start this one out. I think this was one of the situations, don't get me wrong, I think this was one of the situations where once we saw the lobby screen, we kind of had an idea, right, with Delhi versus Malians. Eliona did the best he could to try to have some feudal age presence, didn't quite get there, right? As you can see, for resources gathered, actually, Eliona didn't do that bad in terms of resources. Eliona actually had a 700 total lead. But what you're not seeing is the stuff like the gold that he got. How did he get that gold? Sacred sites. How did he get, blacksmith upgrades for free? Right? So a lot of the resources, even though you're looking at the screen, you're like, wow, Delhi didn't get a lot of resources. How'd they get that many units? They saved in so many different areas. Those resources really matter.
Definitely. The fact that you get to a point where everything is cost free, it just makes it so much harder for your opponent to keep up. And Marlians' power spike, you just don't allow it. And Marlians doesn't have that time they need to get that cow boom going and then overwhelm you because you're already overwhelming them. So Alyona doing his best. He looked good there for a second. He tried to do a few more casual plays in people's base, but it wasn't enough. And that is just the matchup already being decided before the game. But nothing to scoff at. Baltoon definitely did a good job at taking his engages properly. But I wouldn't say that this is going to be an easy one for him. Alyona definitely showed that he's ready to fight. And on the next map, though, we'll see what the decision is. But from what I saw in the player chats, the boys said that Baltoon has outdrafted Alyona. So we'll see if that's the case. What matchup are you scared of as a diamond player, Tim?
Not really scared, more mauled inducing. When anybody picks English, if there are people in the chat that watch my stream regularly, you would know all of the maulding episodes that I have about the English, and I do know, Whamen, that is your #1 civilization. So the fact that we're able to stay good friends means the connection that we have must be that strong.
Wow. What? And I mean, on a map like this, it's a map where I would definitely not throw English out. I think a lot of these maps that we don't have full vision all around, it does give English a bit of an advantage on a map like this because you do want to get those towers, you do want to get the attack speed. But both of these players are very, very scary on most of their civilizations, and I don't think, like most of us, they need to worry about the vision that we struggle with because I think for most of us, we drop off our sheep and then we forget our scout exists. But these players don't. They know how to put the scout in front of your base, they know how to see where your army is. So I think on a map like Pigeon's View, you definitely don't have that disadvantage. Now, guys, for those of you asking about the coaches or what they're doing, are they coaching? Yes, both of these players are getting coached right now. And when it comes to the YouTube videos, you will be able to watch these from the coach's perspective at the same time. We will be making sure that these get uploaded and edited, making sure that you can see what it sounds like during fights as well. So when the players are in a very deep battle, what the coaches are telling them from both sides and seeing how that plays out. So we're going to try to put that part of the tournament on YouTube to make it a little bit more focused on that type of content because this is the first of its kind when it comes to the entertainment value that we want to be adding in. It's really hard to put that on the mainstream because, we'd have to jump in and out of Discord. But it's something that if we have a little bit more of a heads up on, we'll definitely do better for the next one. So from now, you guys better trust that these boys know what they're doing and they're coaching. And I can see all of them in their Discord channels yapping away. So MarineLord is doing his best. On SteelSeries' YouTube channel, no, we will probably upload these on Age of RTS, which is not very much active, but we'll make sure to post these on Reddit. So make sure you look on Reddit, on Facebook, and yeah, on, I guess, Beastie's Discord. We'll probably also link these, so you guys will have access to them there. Now, Tim, we finally have our matchup. Neither of us seeing white and red flag here. There's a lot of red, but Malian's now on the other side. Are we going to finally see a cow boom? Or are we going to see a Jugunu all-in that overwhelms people for the years to come?
Yeah, I mean, the stuff that China does, they're one of the more reactive civs in the meta, right? So it could give potential for the Malians to get that cow boom off. But you kind of alluded to the one ace up their sleeve that the Chinese might have, and that's Zug Nu. Now, don't get me wrong, you know, the Baltoon and the Malians, they do have javelin throwers and all that kind of stuff. But the Zug Nu are going to do guaranteed 3 damage if they get all of those bolts off. So are the Zug Nu going to end up reigning supreme? Are we going to see something like what Scatterbrain did before against the Delhi and just pump out 90 of them SOBs and then take the damage to them? That remains to be seen, but I do know it's a Malian cow boom. You let them get that cow boom off, you're in trouble, Bubble.
Now, China, we've seen a lot of on the maps that don't have an easy access to stone. We've seen them be 1 TC play. On a map like this, they actually have a choice of doing things differently. And like we know with Malians, people tend to try and outboom them as well, getting that second TC and trying to stay up to level of the cows. So let's see if that is what we're going to be dealing with here.
They were very excited to dive in to game number 2, Baltoon. As the Malians in the color red spawning in the eastern part of the map, Eliona will be his opponent for this series, playing as the Chinese in the color blue. So I want to talk about Pigeon's View just a little bit because it's the first time we're seeing it today. The amount of stealth forest that's here really favors things like reactive play. You know, if you can't scout what kind of army you have, right, or you don't have a scout that's available to you as Eliona swipes that sheep, that's got to be Baltoon's got to be Malden at that one. The ability or lack thereof to see in those stealth forests, it means that players are kind of a little bit skittish on the aggressive factor.
I can completely understand that. When you don't know exactly what's in your face, it does start to get a little bit scarier. Now, I want to see what happens here with the deer packs, though. You see Beastie's teammate here, Mr. Baltoon, he's got that double deer, which is really, really juicy. I would imagine if you're going for professional scouts, you don't need to put them too far, or you could just put your villagers there. And we saw that before. Malians not being scared to go out onto the rest of the map. So we'll see if that is going to be the case over here. But Eliona now, looking at his spawn here, he's got some pretty juicy places to put his barbican as well. He can decide to put that onto the food and get a very healthy set amount of food there. He's got 2 berry patches right next to each other, a deer right under it, plus another berry patch. This is nothing that I would let that poor Eliona do if I was Baltoon, because you just cannot let China get that much food. They are going to snowball so quickly, as we saw in a previous game.
Oh, I did hear the word snowball. I think it's my time to chime in with the with the Chinese. You're exactly right, because that's kind of the little part of it, you know, for China. That's a little bit of their weak point, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. It's really good they got all these sheep, and it's really going to help them make sure that they have a stable food source, right? But once they have to go out on the map, they have a little bit of time to try to get those outside food resources before they get a granary transition, if the game does end up going that late. So that's an area that you can raid. So that's exactly right. Some of the Barbicans you see, some of them go on boar, some of them go on deer packs, and there's a couple berries. You might be able to push the deer from south to north over there as well if he chooses to do that. But Baltoon, going with the standard Mansa Quarry, 5 villagers on it. And because of, we've seen some play from China also of professional scouts, Mali could have the potential to do that as well, and we could see kind of a replay of what happened in the prior game.
Now, the prior game, I think we definitely saw an overwhelming amount of units going towards the Malians. China does take a little bit longer to get there. So it might open up that opportunity for Malians to also get there themselves. But looking at how Baltoon's gold is spread out on the map, I think it's going to be quite easy to punish them. He's got that back one that's quite safe with that wood line that protects him. But Alyona definitely has a lot more opportunity to slow this down. Now, we do see still a lot of villagers on food here, which means we're definitely going to be seeing our Song Dynasty. I would be very surprised if we didn't. But now Baltoon aging up soon as well with the Monster Quarry, and we'll see what that first production building is going to be looking like. Getting those straggler trees like a very responsible Malians. I am in awe. I'm a person who always skips the stragglers and regrets my decision after. So I'm glad to see they just reinforce the idea. Get your stragglers. They're great. Look at that small wall that Cow is showing us. Very, very easy to capitalize on.
Yeah, and because of how close those, based on the straggler trees, because of how close the straggler trees are, right? They're kind of like right next to the town center, so you're going to be able to transition your way out of that. Now, Eliola, with the Imperial Academy, does have a couple Imperial officials continuing to supervise, which is going to help him out in the economy. I'm very curious to see what he does end up doing with this, because you talked about even 2TC kind of play, right? When we saw the Byzantines go up against them, you're like, well, you got to catch up with them economically. Maybe there's some of that play going on. But Elion, the first thing he's going to do is going to drop a stable, supervise that stable. And is he going to make a unit? Yeah, he's adding some horsemen out here, maybe for some raiding potential.
And that's exactly what I talked about earlier. The fact that you give Malians the time to boom and to get ahead. And Alyona does exactly the opposite of that. He says, I'm going to dictate the pace of this game. You are not going to get the whole map. He's playing into Chinese's strength, which is supervision. And that's definitely something that I've underestimated just from the start of this game. Amazing choice here, Bella Alyona, just making sure that Baltoon doesn't get to sit back, relax, and just make cows. So we see that first Donzo in queue right now. But no more horsemen in queue from Alyona. So probably just there to put the pressure on and cause Baltoon to react instead of boom.
Yeah, and having those 1 or 2 horsemen, as we're seeing professional scouts by the Chinese, really important because you can supervise the mill to get that production of that technology even faster, right? So horsemen, just having those 1 or 2 means if there is some professional scouts shenanigans with warrior scouts, you might be able to do okay in that regard. But remember, these Donzos, it's just a solo Donzo. Villager actually goes down for Baltoon, trying to get that pit mine on the eastern side. So he's going to be -1 villager. One of the things with professional scouts and with these Donzos, they don't have the same, right? They don't have the same vision. So with the professional scouts, they could maybe break away from those Donzos, and then they end up getting lost in the stealth.
And just yoinking a few of these is already going to be so valuable here for him. Just getting that snowball, starting to pack it as the China. He's doing exactly that. And look at that very safe, I would say, Barbican. Just making sure that he covers his wood line. I'm actually quite surprised. It might just be because of the pressure that the stealth gives you. The fact that in the stealth forest, you usually don't run into because you don't know where the Barbican is going to be that you're running your units into.
Well, the thing of it is, too, as we're seeing the bonuses of Song Dynasty Villager production speed, we're going to see that really come out for Eliona and how much those villagers make an impact, especially when you're dealing with the passive income of the Malians. But you're talking about that Barbican placement, Whamen. You got to think about it. If he's pro scouts, he doesn't really need to secure outside food. You know, he can just put it somewhere where, you know, he keeps his production safe, his wood line safe on that side, you know. So if Baltoon tried to get very aggressive in feudal age or even in castle age, as you get a lot of those Malian troops, that Barbican's going to help you.
that Barbican definitely won't allow for some easy ramming that will destroy your production like we saw in a previous game here. And I think this is... Oh, that's a very good point. Thank you, Tim. Now I've been educated. Now, what we see now is Baltoon, we start to see the red dots moving towards the deer. Now, this is where I have to ask myself, is he just trying to put those donzos into a good spot, making sure that they don't get to yoink these? But it looks like he's going to go and protect this gold. This pit mine he wants to get secured here. Not an easy pit mine to get going, but we did see a lot of those villagers on gold at the bottom there. Alyona now making some Jugunu, and honestly, after watching that one game with this 80 Jugunu, I am a little bit worried here for Baltoon. It's going to be a pretty tough game for him to handle.
Yeah, you know, with the Malians, because they're so unique, because they have just about all of their units are not that any other Civ can get. Sometimes you have a kit that matches up well against them, and sometimes you don't. And that makes Malians very polarizing for a lot of matchups. Zugnu are one of those things that's like, yeah, I got pretty much what we need to deal with out of your kit. And then he's adding horsemen too because of the food from professional scouts, right? So he's able to get a lot of horsemen. The Zugnu are going to be able to be, even these archery ranges could be supervised if Eliona is doing that. Make sure that those Zugnu take down the Donzos. Those horsemen have free reign over the javelin throwers, and there's your ball game.
And that's kind of a difficult position for you as Malians to be in, because you know, okay, my opponent is getting a lot of horsemen, he's getting a lot of Jukunu. What am I supposed to do? And the answer here is, as we can see, javelins. But those javelins need to target fire every single one of them to actually trade effectively. And with Malians, it's really, really hard to do when you're playing against something like 60 Jukunu, which is not going to take a long time to get. But as we can now see in the bottom corner now, we see our first Malians with a proper cow boom. 15 cows already in the pens, which means that he's going to have all that free food to try and stay ahead. And honestly, I think that's quite a lot at this stage of the game. It feels like he got a lot of time, and if Eliona cannot close this pretty soon, that eco is going to make a very large difference. Now, a lot of you might be saying, yes, but Eliona has more vills. Yes, but the cows just are so good for food. Villagers still need to go around the map, do their thing, but these cows, they're just pumping food straight into your bank.
Oh, yeah, and you don't even need to think about it, right? It's not like Pro Scouts where you got to go find all the deer, you got to bring them back, you got to whatever. All the Malians do is make ranches and put some cows in it, and then they're going to have that passive income. Eliona continuing to try to get some of those deer packs after, you know, that eastern infestation that's there, and we'll be able to grab a couple more. Pit Mine is going to be going down, so a little bit of that passive income is not going to be achieved by Baltoon. I really like what Eliona is doing here. And he's not really going for villagers to take down as the Malians. He's going after buildings. And that's the real kicker. Those are the resources that you're getting in as a trickle that aren't taking population space with those pit mines, right? So taking those down means it's really going to help you. Plus, with all of the villagers he's getting with Song Dynasty is proving to be effective. You can see the economic count, plus the Imperial officials, but the economic count continuing to rise for Eliona.
And that is not going to be something to scoff at in the late game, because villagers do count. The numbers do count eventually for a lot more, especially once you've got most of your food transitions going. But I don't know if Malians allows you to get there. We do see 14 javelin throws right now. But as I'm saying that, I look over the Jugunu number and 33. I am quaking in my boots right now for this poor man. And he did get his upgrades, making sure that he's going to be okay for a while, but we do see those villagers depleting the berries as well. And this is now going to start getting to that point where you, as Malians, you need that castle age. And Eliona is already ahead with that. He's getting castle himself now, and he's going to be able to supervise those upgrades that he needs. And I don't feel like Baltoon is ready to produce enough units to deal with that. Malians is a defensive civilization for most of their early game, and he needs to survive that for a bit longer still.
It's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting the difference of aggression that we're seeing against the Malians, right? Because we saw a previous China player just make a bunch of Zugnu, I'm sorry, and that's what was the offensive. But Eliona going for the different route. He has enough units. Now he's just going to make the quality of them better. So we'll see which one ends up reigning supreme. Baltoon is going to be closely following him. in the Castle Age department, but it's going to take him a while for him to get his upgrades and all that kind of stuff. For Eliona, now with the units that he has, he's going to continue to make units. He sees the notification that Baltoon hits Castle Age, and he is going in there.
Now, just like China, but Malians also has a really good ability to get their upgrades pretty quickly. 9 on the Fulani Corral now, and the thing is, just those upgrades, you want to engage before those upgrades kick in, but you also want to engage before that food economy just explodes, and that's exactly what's going to be happening here. We do see a little bit of low of a bit of gold there at the bottom for Mr. Baltoon. So he won't be able to get all the upgrades he needs from this. This is going to be a really tough one for him because that gold also won't be lasting forever. We do see a lot of the stable transitioning coming out now. Those villagers are doing their best at getting this up, but this is a really scary moment here. Ooh, and losing those villagers is every little bit that Eliona needs to get. Now the boys here from the gold are going to be pushed off. They need to get every bit of gold they can, deliver, and get the upgrades. We see those upgrades getting queued up instantly. And now the question is, can he hold this before that army engages?
Oh, yeah, this is your game, right? It's feudal age units against castle. I mean, Baltoon does have the starting town center that's going to be able to help out. Went into Musafati a little bit and then realized that that wasn't a good idea because he just went castle age with some of his units. He probably expected Palace Guard. He expected things like Lancers, but didn't quite get there. Eliona going castle age, I just feel like he didn't have the military mass to really dive in. And with those Zugnu not being very mobile, you're trying to get to the back of the base where the gold is and the cattle is and all that. You're really putting yourself in harm's way and a point that you probably can't escape from. So Eliona backs up.
And the problem now is he's backed up, but he's also let the gold boys go back on gold. So Baltoon is getting every bit of gold he needs to start his transition. But as I say transition, I see that he's also getting a scholar, making sure that he goes and picks up some of those relics too. And Eliona says, let me just roll back and quickly get these bad boys that are just going to ram your base and make sure to bust open your face. But I also see in the upgrade lane there, that's going to be a sofa upgrade. Isn't it? Yes, and we're seeing sofas in the queue. Unfortunately, Zhuge-Nu don't do too well against them. So we'll see if the number of sofas that he can produce will be enough to handle this, because this is going to be quite a scary push. He does need a little bit of time. And the crossbows coming with that is also going to help quite a bit with it. So the sofa numbers, while they're going to be nice, they need to be quick. And the crossbows, they're going to make these Zhuge-Nus worth their body weight in meat shields, for sure.
And that's what, I mean, the sofas, obviously, based on what Baltoon has seen from the Chinese army, sofas are a good pick, right? The imported armor is really going to help you against the Zugnu. It's those crossbowmen that start to come in later where he's going to be like, I really hate that he made that change. I wish it was just Zugnu. But Eliona now with a couple siege apparatuses, with a couple rams, going to be trying to take down these cattle ranches, going for the buildings that are producing the resources for Baltoon, and that's exactly what he ends up doing. You will be able to take down those cows, and you have to harvest them before you can make more, so that would prove to be difficult. Baltoon with those javelin throwers, doing the best he can to micro on the back end. He's looking for archers. He might have the potential to take down a couple horsemen, but that critical mass just isn't there anymore. With a couple horsemen that are here, maybe sofas can help clean it up. Eliona, this was supposed to be this death push, and he did stop some Malian economy. He did stop some cows. But Baltoon is continuing to hold just a little bit for the time being. He does have defender's advantage. Let's see if he makes Eliona back up, but he does.
I'm honestly very surprised. It felt like Eliona was going to be able to close this one out, but it's still a ticking time bomb because we don't have any more gold here on Baltoon's side. He's going to have to go all the way out on this map. The javelin thrower is doing some really good work here, cleaning up what they can, but the army numbers still in favor of Eliona, even if just slightly. I just don't know for how long, because we know what the Malian eco does, and honestly, it feels like that food eco, it hasn't paid off just yet, but it's about to. Even some of these cattle's going down, at least the villagers will be able to harvest them, and we see he's put them to work pretty quickly, and he's going to restock those at any point now. The villagers onto the eastern side? I had to calculate that one. I was like, east to west. It's east. He's getting gold on the eastern side, so now he just needs to hold back for a little bit more and now go for the push. Now, we do see a nest of bees in that army now of Alyona, and this is usually how you get the Malians. You see that huge army from them, and then you just need to make sure that you know, nest of bees them. And with the amount of units that Alyona has, he should be able to do so. But Beltoon, as long as he keeps up this production, Alyona is not going to have an easy time.
Yeah, and I think now, I mean, with those cows getting harvested rather quickly, obviously when they do get harvested, you're able to put them back into cattle ranches, so that's very helpful. The thing of it is, I mean, the corral is obviously giving him most of his food economy. You can see the economy difference out of both of these players, right? And this is really important because Malians and Chinese, even though Chinese have 20 economic lead, the economy is still kind of neck and neck. But the difference is that the Malians have their corral pretty much there. They have their pit mines that are pretty much there as well. If Alyona wants safe food, as it gets later into the game, he's going to need a granary transition. And is he going to reduce his tempo in order to do that?
That's going to be the exact issue, I think, for the Chinese to transition here. Now, we do see that those Sofas doing some good work here at the back, too. The problem with Malians already having their food and gold set up means that China is going to have a point now where they are pretty strong. And this push is still going to be pretty scary. But if Baltoon can stop this, China is going to have to back off and do their transition. And that's going to give him that opening to do something with. We do see these Sofas, they might be caught behind here, but they're going to cause that constant pressure and damage. And they're going to cause Alyona to waste time here at the back, which you probably don't want to give Malians that time to try and decide what they want to be doing next. Malians now getting poison archers, and oof, Tim, poison archers are scary, aren't they?
Yeah, they absolutely are. And I don't think any of those Chinese soldiers have the antidote handy in their back pocket. So getting a lot of those are super good against things like crossbowmen too. I mean, archers are usually good against crossbowmen. You can see how many Alyona has. You know, he's trying to get a really big ranged mass. You know, he has the Zuganu, he has the crossbowmen. So getting things like poison archers will end up helping you. And we know the strength of what a mangonel can do in Castle Age. Sometimes these big ranged masses end up just steamrolling and winning the game. And now we're at a point, you talked about Alyona making pushes and all that kind of stuff. I think this game has reversed. Whamen. Now Baltoon has the ability to go aggressive. It depends on if he could make an impact, if he could stop the little bit of boom that Chinese wants to do. A lot of villagers get caught out in harm's way. They were getting a berry pack over there a little bit more eastern from their position. He's raiding in multiple areas. So now Baltoon, this is his offensive time because he did that hold previously.
Now, it is not a push for free, though, because Alyona doesn't sit back and let you do what you want to do. He's got pressure there on the eastern side that should be able to punish those gold villagers being so far out on the base. But now, with the units that Baltoon has here, this is very, very scary, especially with the composition we see here. The amount of spearmen that is on Alyona's side is going to make this Sofa army look like paper, though, and he's losing quite a bit of those. It feels like he does need to back off with these because the numbers are in Alyona's favor, especially with that nest of bees. He doesn't have something that can collapse on it right now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If he does get enough nest of bees, because a lot of what he has are foot soldiers. I mean, he does have sofas as well, but the spearmen could take care of them. Looks like a fight will be breaking out. Alyona trying to claw his way back in after that hold. Keep gets canceled from Baltoon on the eastern side. They got to back up. Probably that outpost ends up getting canceled as well. I don't think this was a fight Baltoon wanted to take right now. He needs time to mass up. But really quickly, as the Malian forces start to retreat over to their home base, look at Alyona's food per minute, Whamen. It's at an absolute goose egg.
Wow. Alyona actually getting stopped here, and he's trying to get that back online. You can see now the little bit of food dropping in. He's got villagers in the north there, and that's exactly the moment we talked about earlier. The moment you stop having all those pocket resources is the moment you need to transition, and that's where it slows you down. Nest of Bees getting a pretty decent collision here, but the keep is going to come in just in time to make sure that this fight isn't an easy one for Alyona. And now, with those food sources from Malians being online, this is going to be the moment that Baltoon overtakes China. He did get a tower there very aggressively. The Nest of Bees being a little bit out of position. The archers are going to be able to snipe that down. And now he just needs to be careful, get that mass up, and Baltoon should be able to push out. But this is really, really scary for Alyona now. Now let's see, with 1,000 wood in the bank, he should be able to plop down a granary or two and start the farm transition. But it's going to cost him a little bit of time.
Yeah, you can see that first granary is now there. His second granary starting to get there. If you saw previously while that battle was going on, Alyona was sitting about 2,000 wood per minute. So he pulled probably the entire Chinese villager population to try to get wood to get these granaries. But again, this is tempo cost, right? From this, he wanted to use that offensive to kind of buy him a little time to get those granaries on the backside. But Baltoon, he can continue to make units because he's set up already. He's set up already. And that's the power of the Malians, and that's the power of having that hold that he had before. He's got Musafati warriors now in the queue. He's still using poison archers. He's actually adding a couple warrior scouts as well. So he can make this. Now this is when you get some Zergling action for the Malians. Everything's come online, and now you're going to be able to really take the tide. And even if you take battles that are not very cost effective for you, you can continue to produce and make as many units as you want. So this is Baltoon's time to shut this game down.
And he's trying to do exactly that. That army breaking through that wall. They don't know about that villager mass in the north that is trying to desperately get home. Kind of forgotten about at this point, it seems. The boys are going to be in a little bit of danger there. Villagers, units pushing out here from Baltoon. He's going to see those villagers onto gold too. But now, if he gets into this backline, it's going to be a lot harder to shut him down. The Sofas do get pushed back, but the Musafatis, those invisible boys, are going to cause some havoc once they get into the base. Because they're really, really hard to spot.
Yeah, and he's got to, I mean, with that damage, he's got to figure out what to do about it, right? Like, he's got to go over and try to find some villagers, try to find where those granaries are, all that kind of stuff. Because now, look at that Chinese food resources, right? Now they're there. Chinese, it takes a little bit more time to get that food transition, but they did get there. Baltoon did extort some of the map's resources, obviously with a couple of those sacred sites, could be taking down some of those towers as well. So not only is he trying to be offensive, not only is he trying to put on these granaries, but he's also putting Alyona on a clock.
And Alyona is usually on a civilization that loves a clock, because they are usually the ones knowing that late game belongs to them. And yes, he does have that villager lead, but it's going to be so difficult to actually close it out, especially with those mobile units that are looking straight at your farms. We've seen he's actually made a little bit of a wall there at the top to make sure that his farms are a little bit protected. But once these Sofas gets in, they're so difficult to shut down. And again, there's no other food source here that he can go and fall back on. These Sofas now causing a lot of idle time, and the second wave is waiting there right in the west at the gold to stream in and cause more idle time.
And this is why we're seeing right now why the Malian cow boom feels better, right? You get some Sofas over there. He had about maybe 5 to 8 kind of Sofas over there. If you just put some units back there, all of those villagers have to run away. The cows don't do that. They sit in their ranch and passively get income, and then you can just make a couple more later. So this food, all of this food is paying off for him, right? While as when the granaries start getting taken down, the villagers have to run away. His food gets absolutely disintegrated. So Baltoon is at that point where he has enough units that he can go back there and continuously harass those granaries. I don't know if Alyona is going to be able to get that food economy to get as much army to actually repel him.
And those Sofas are really starting to show their power. Baltoon knows that he's getting more and more. The Musafatis getting into those granary lines, shutting down those villages. Like you said, they have to run for their lives. The army is there, and they're going to clean this up. But at what cost? These Sofas at the front lines, they're just ready to fight more. The Musafatis here at the back line are ready to support these units in their mission. The villager count being equal now, which is not something you want to be when you are playing against Malians. Now Malians ahead in villagers, and this just shows what that Zerg push actually ended up doing. And the trade coming online, of course. Malians. Oh, that's why it's even. That's so many traders.
He's been trading the whole time. Whamen. Oh my god. And now all these villagers are going down for Alyona. Oh my god. This Chinese province is in shambles. Spearmen trying to help out. I know there's some crossbowmen back there. as well. But Eliona's like, yeah, I got nothing for this. And in a rather impressive display from Baltuna, Malians versus China, he takes it.
Yeah, and he honestly did an amazing point of defense there at the back. The moment he got pushed into, those javelin throwers were doing the best work they possibly could. I thought for a moment there he was going to be dead, but the man said, I am not dead. Look at my jabs. And he showed us exactly what Malians can do when they are on the back foot, even if just for a little bit. But do you see that military value lead looking like it was going to be going over to Mr. Alyona there for a long time, but just the proper defense was truly shining here the moment Baltoon got his Zerg pump station ongoing.
Yeah, it's such a cool hold from Baltoon because that's the point where you feel like the Malians should go down, right? Because you spend resources on ranches and all that kind of stuff and pit mines and all the things that make the Malians strong. But because of that, you're thinking, well, they should probably have less units, right? I should be kind of taking care of that. I think Eliona's Castle Age might not have been it. Like he had about like 30 Zugnu and then he ended up going up. I feel like if he just kept making units, maybe it could have been a little better. What do you think?
The problem is, I think, with making units is you need to have the resources for said units, right? And I think that it would have been better, but you need to actually have the juice or the fruits to make the juice, and the juice just couldn't get produced after some point. You know you're on a timer when you are not the one with the cows in your base. So I think at some point he just didn't know how to close it out. But definitely going to be learning from that. We're about to go into Russeneienbuds. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we do, let's take a minute to look at our scores. We see here on Beastie's team, he's got 8 points. MarineLord, on the other hand, with 9. Now, whichever team gets to 13 first wins this. So if Baltoon loses these games, he's going to make sure that Kiliardi is going to have a very hard time against Anatan, because Anatan, one of the highest rated players right now, probably the favorite to take all of these games. So Baltoon needs to make sure that he makes good work of Alyona. Otherwise, Kiliardi is going to have a really tough time. But ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to hop into the game. You can see the scores in front of you. Take a peek, take a picture. We're going to roll right in and see if Alyona can do something against this vicious Swedish man, Mr. Baltoon.
Yeah, he's got to get on the board, man. Just any game that Eliona takes is going to be incredibly pivotal, right? Because we talk about the Antan and Kiljardi matchup that's a little bit after, right? But with this one, you got to set your teammate up for success, right? And if Eliona is able to maybe take a game or two out of this, maybe we'll see. We did see a 2-0 start for Drakevan in the last series, and then Scatterbrain came all the way back and reversed him and got 3 straight. Is this Eliona's time to shine in a Roos versus Abbasid matchup? I'm very biased because I love the Roos. So the Ibis versus Roos matchup, we could talk about it a little bit while we wait for this game to go underway. It's always nice when you're playing with the Ayubids and your opponent is a cavalry civ. The Roos have a potential to get cavalry with those horse archers. We're going to see if you're going to be able to do that for Baltoon. He's playing as the Roos in the color red, spawning in the southeastern portion of the map. Eliona's Ayubids is going to be in the northwest. Got nice berries in the back. Got some gold that's a little bit forward. And you're right, that stone, just because there's no starting stone, secondary is a little bit out there. You talked about Roos having that 2 TC Kremlin build, which was pretty much like, because that was kind of the only way that they played for a couple seasons. I remember when I was playing Roos, it was kind of drag your face across the keyboard and make a second town center. Now, there's a little bit of difference in that play, going with Golden Gate, going with horse archers. And for horse archers, the ability, the micro, right? The skill ceiling that you can get with those horse archers, you see such skillful players using them, and it's mesmerizing.
Now, I can imagine the fact that we're playing on a map where you don't have as many places to run to means that if you can use a unit in a mesmerizing way, you can definitely get that damage done. I'm looking specifically at Baltoon's base here, and I feel like that tiny woodline he has next to him, which it's pretty great. He's going to be perfectly okay knowing he has a Kremlin and everything, right? But if he does go for Golden Gate now, that's a whole different discussion. Alyona, on the other hand, he's got an amazing spawn here. And I don't feel like horse archers are going to be able to do as much damage to someone with a spawn like this. Look at this man. He is living his best life. He's got a gold and his wood right next to it. He's going to be able to make a tiny, tiny wall and defend most of his base. He's got some safe resources all around. Well, Baltoon is the man with the open resources. He's definitely going to struggle a lot more. So I'm really glad that he's the man who have the horse archer card, because you're going to need a lot of cards if you're this far spread, I would say. Because even that gold that he has is very, very out there.
And I'll tell you what, Wayman, just to play a little bit of devil's advocate with you, for the Ayubids, they don't get that economic wing like the Abyssids do, right? Where their farms are super cheap and then their food is safely nestled betwixt a couple town centers, right? For Eliona, he doesn't have that play. So you could get a time, whereas Ayubids do a fast castle, they're probably going to be able to do it a little quicker than the Rus is. However, you can get to a point where you have to go out and get some of those food resources, those deer packs, those berries, all of that kind of stuff. And then those could be susceptible to raiding if he has the opportunity to do it. And if the Ayubids don't get the map control that they want in Castle Age. But Ayubid's going to be going with the culture wing for those couple dervishes automatically. Baltoon going for that nice golden gate. And because of the golden gate's existence, Wayman, I was always a big advocate of the golden gate because it just gives you every minute, it just gives you extra resources. You can redistribute some of your resources in the way that you want to make whatever you need to make, right? So people talk about some of the best landmarks in the game. I truly think the golden gate is up there because of how favorable not only the trades are for the resources, but the ability to kind of change it up and do if you need something like a blacksmith or a wooden fortress or getting something like pro scouts, you have the ability to change it so you can, right? So that flexibility is so huge.
Well, with the amount of resources we see here from Aliona getting that wood, I feel like we're not going to be seeing that much of a fast castle that far ahead of everyone else, at least. So it feels like usually when Ayyubids do decide to go for that, they distribute those villages a little bit differently. So with Baltoon, definitely looking like he has Fast Castle on mind, especially for those of you wondering, but why? He's got so much on wood. Now, that's exactly what the Golden Gate allows for. The Golden Gate allows you to resell that wood and get what you need to age up. So, Elyona, with a lot of those on wood, it looks like he's going to be making some stuff instead, especially when you're getting those two dervishes. You can raid your opponent quite easily, and when they do take damage, you just bring those bad boys back home and heal them up to full.
Yeah, and I think it's a pretty heads up play from Elion if he wants to go for a military building because you got to expect the Rus player to be having something pro scout related, right? He hasn't necessarily clicked the button yet, but it could be a potential for him to do so. Opted for the wooden fortress actually first. So if you're Eliona, you get a couple units. Infilade some desert raiders are really going to help you out, especially if scouts are trying to get deer and they're a little bit slower when they have a deer carcass and all of that kind of stuff. So you can have the ability to do something. Now, Baltoon kind of going away from getting pro scouts immediately because of how close that deer pack actually was, that starting deer pack. So instead of using professional scouts, this is rather barbaric for the scouts to do, but they're just going to go ahead and push them.
Oh, they tried to, and unfortunately, Aliona says you are not going to get these deer for free, but he did get quite a bit of them. A lot of these deer got safely to the base, and he still got a lot of sheep to go alongside that. Now, this is going to mean Baltoon, you guys can see, he's floating that food. He's very, very confident. And all that wood income that he's got going is just going to make sure that he's going to be able to sell and achieve that castle age he needs to. Now, Alyona, he's got those two camels as well. So they're definitely going to be able to cause a little bit of havoc But at the same time, Baltoon is ready for this. We can see that tiny wall that he's erected there at the bottom, hoping to make sure that those camels stay out of his base. And problem is those walls build very, very slowly. He's aware, and he's fixing that right now.
Yeah, and with that Desert Raider there, if he didn't get that wall up, that would be devastating, right? Having that back area away from that wooden fortress as well, outside the range of that fortress, is really important. That Desert Raider, just because it has the utility of being arrow shooting as well, means a villager can't go over there and get that, right? The villager can't go over there and build that wall up all the way. But having that back wall was super clutch. Having those two dervishes with that Desert Raider as well makes sure that whatever Baltoon makes, he's going to have to make a lot of it to cut through the damage that a dervish can heal with. Baltoon does go with Castle Age first because of the fact that Eliona made a couple of those Desert Raiders. Going to be going with that high trade house on the back side. There's potential for that wooden fortress to kind of help him out, hopefully. But with two of those Desert Raiders, maybe he can stall it out a little bit.
The problem is these villages are going to take quite a bit of damage now because these are ranged, remember? So even though these guys are going to be able to get this thing up eventually, I don't think it's worth it because these villages are going to take way too much damage. Now, this is now the question, does he just cancel this and decide to go elsewhere? And that's exactly what he's doing. He's like, okay, this is probably not going to work. But at the same time, Eliona has clicked his age up as well. And now finding an optimal wood line is going to be so much harder. The dervish is around trying to heal that up, and he does save that bad boy. We are going to be getting it up top here, and he's desperately trying to get this thing up on a healthy wood line, because if you don't, you're just going to get a very empty high trade house here. Now, the camels do need to rotate, and they might take a while, but honestly, they could get a villager kill or two here.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely not ideal, right? Baltoon pulls his damaged villagers, so he's going to be able to help. Maybe you can reposition some of those villagers just to make sure. Ooh, that Desert Raider, a little bit of a micro malfunction on the south side. Desert Raider still is within range of that wooden fortress, so the dervish is going to try to heal it up. Obviously, not an ideal spot for the high trade house for a couple reasons. I mean, first, obviously, you want a wood line that's relatively close, but because that high trade house is in front, the deer that you're getting spawned from it, those villagers become pretty susceptible to things like raids and all of that kind of stuff. You do have a wooden fortress helping you out, but still, having that high trade house right front and center is difficult. Those Desert Raiders, just that little bit of time where Baltoon had to cancel the high trade house, make another one, all that kind of stuff, it helped Eliona get to Castle Age, hit that button, and give it time to actually get there. And my God, Whamen,
Oh, no.
what do we
no.
see Baltoon queuing right now? I want to hear it. Tell me.
Guys, we're getting horse archers. And we're not just getting one. We're not just getting two. We're getting 3 archery ranges full of them. These guys are going to be swarming the map like little zerglings. The horses, they have everything out. Oh, Cal, removing them from the game with a black block. Thank you very much for saving the viewers the trauma. And unfortunately, this is going to be a tough one for Eliona to handle, but he is getting horsemen. And Tim, what is the situation with horsemen and horse archers? How do you feel about that matchup?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting because the horse archers have enough mobility. If you have enough horse archers, you could still one-tap horsemen. You know, based on the base damage of horse archers, if you click on it, base damage is 12. They don't have a lot of armor, actually none of it, but they have that mobility. So if you have enough horse archers, and you can get more horse archers than your opponent can get horsemen, especially because the archer range to stable discrepancy. If you have enough horse archers, the horsemen are going to try to get you. They are a little bit faster. They're going to try to get you. But you could do enough damage where you might not lose too much, and it's not cost effective for the Ayubid. So obviously, you know, when you're thinking about units that are countered, you want things like horsemen, you want things like archers, but the best way to defend against horse archers is exactly what Eliona is doing on the western side. It's walls. It's outposts. It's everything that could be defensive and static, because horse archers are still just going to do one against an outpost, so they got to run away.
And that's exactly what most players are not sure of how to handle. How are you supposed to defend against these guys? And seeing that answer loud and clear, now getting these walls up, like I said before, they're going to be so much easier than they would be for Baltoon here. So Baltoon, making sure that he gets that mobile unit in his pocket, this is going to be so important. And we see now 13 horse archers on the field, and he's getting that +1 for them as well. So Alyona, he is in the lead when it comes to villagers, right? But keeping in mind that Baltoon, he does get those passive resources. So even though this is a 7 villager discrepancy, it's not that serious. It should be around 4, all things considered, because you do have that passive gold. You do have the relics now coming in, even though Leona did get a little bit more now. That last relic is going to be the last contested one, but it should go over to Baltoon, especially with this mobile army. But now, that's starting to become a lot of scary horsemen on the field, though.
Yeah, there are a decent amount of horsemen, and Eliona has 3 stables and continuing to pump them out, right? So now he's getting the horseman count that could prove to be pretty devastating to these horse archers. So what do you do for Baltoon? You know, you can't just rely on, as much as I'd like to say this, you can't just rely on just horse archers, right? You're going to need something else. Baltoon with a composition going for a little bit of a change, going with crossbowmen and going with some spearmen as well. So a lot of the times, a lot of professional players, not like myself, who just make 60 horse archers and then they get obliterated by something, but you use them for map control in the beginning, and then you transition to something else that's going to help you. So him going spearman is really going to help against those horsemen, make sure those horse archers don't get a surround. And then you can build, crossbowmen, you could build whatever you want to kind of turn the tide for you. But the horse archers, because you can get them so quickly, because you can get them so cheaply, it's really good to help you while you're trying to get relics around the map, trying to get map control.
Now, I can see how those definitely have paid off, because I feel like the amount of control that Alyona had was definitely not going to be shut down by anything else other than horse archers when getting these relics now. And Baltoon getting 2 of those relics, I would say, is a huge win for him. Definitely not something I think you would have been able to do, especially considering that you had 2 divishes out on the map already catching those. Now, Baltoon, he is going to need to make sure this transition doesn't get spotted too easily. And it doesn't look like it, because now we see a bunch of crossbows being made here. So, Alyona definitely not sure what's coming out of Baltoon's base. And the spearmen, they will deal pretty well with what Alyona has on the cards for him.
Yeah, because I mean, the crossbowmen don't get the bonus damage, obviously, like an archer does, and they fire a little bit slower, right? So I know a lot of people are saying crossbowmen are like the unit right now, and while I happen to agree with you, things like spearmen could be enough of a fodder for those crossbowmen to just hit, and then all of a sudden you have some units that end up staying alive. Really important caveat for this one, too, as we're seeing the Castle Age, mid-Castle Age kind of develop. Baltoon going with a second town center. You can see it over there on the eastern side of the map on the berries and on the gold as well. So having his ability to do that means that, that starting stone, not having it, not really that big of a deal, because Baltoon just uses the Golden Gate, right? Eliona has to go out to the stone mine that's all the way out there. All Baltoon does is get a couple tickets. He has the wood economy for the roost. And this second town center that goes to this part of the game is a relatively easy transition, because you usually have a lot of food that you could spend on villagers anyway.
And the reason people go for this TC as well is not just because, hey, you're getting a second TC, now you're on 2 TC. It's because you know your opponent is ahead. You know Alyona did get those extra villagers out pretty early on. So you need to find a way to catch up. But Alyona, knowing he's ahead, he's doing exactly the same. He says, I know I'm ahead. I'm going to need to stay ahead. So how do I do that? By getting a second TC as well. So both of these players knowing exactly why they're making these decisions and doing an amazing job at it. But look at those horse archers. They finally got some kills, Tim. How proud of you are you of your babies?
Oh, get him! Get him! Get the horseman! Oh my God, look at him go! That's 4 horsemen that go down. You needed 16 horse archers to do it, but still, very effective in cleaning up a couple horsemen in this battle. I love it. Whamen, I don't know if you've realized, but I'm pretty psyched.
I can definitely hear that. You are having the time of your life just watching those horses do their damn best. And honestly, I am very surprised at how many things they've cleaned up here today. They have made it look like it has been an absolute destruction. So I wonder now what the fight is going to look like, though, because that's a lot of horses. And yes, we do have 25 spearmen here from Baltoon as well. I just don't think Alyona is going to take this head on just yet, because he's still scared of these horse archers at the moment, and maybe this is the thing he's responding to. He could get a very decent surround here, though.
Now, this is when the horse archers get absolutely destroyed. Because you have outposts that are helping. There's some springald emplacements on them too. And now there's just too many horsemen. Like, you're not going to kite that, right? And if you do, I don't know if you're actually doing any kind of damage. But now the spearmen are going to help out. Doesn't look like he's going to make more. He's going to continue on this crossbowman route. And it's pretty interesting seeing compositions out of both these players. They went for a crossbowman when there wasn't any heavy units on the battlefield. And now Elion is starting to change a little bit with all of his archery ranges and going with a bunch of archers, which is going to be very good against Baltoon's composition.
Baltoon's composition is really good against what is on the field right now, but with the amount of archers that you can pump out here, it's going to be hard, especially considering that Eliona has so many of his upgrades ready already. Now, Baltoon is ahead now with villagers, but not for a long time, so he shouldn't get too excited about this, but he knows what he's doing. Look at those men-at-arms that he's starting to make now as well. So the scout does go down. He does have another one for the taking, so he is going to be perfectly fine, but keeping in mind that now the question comes, who gets to move out on the map? Now, they do both have that second gold pretty much secured, and now the farming transition is going to be key. We see Baltoon with his farms. We saw a few in Aliona's base as well, but the food per minute is starting to show more in favor of the Rus. We do see a lot of those bad boys on wood right now, and that could be signaling, hey, we're running low on food. And you can see those villagers are still out on the map getting those pocket resources. So let's see if that spearman composition is actually going to be able to survive against 32 archers right now. Villagers even going for a second layer of wall.
And that's it. And that's the thing with going spearman for Baltoon. Because you started with horse archers, right? And then you added things like crossbowmen and spearmen. And believe me, I completely understand why you went away from horse archer. But because of all the spearmen and crossbowmen, they don't have a horse. So the mobility is definitely in Eliona's favor because all of the horsemen running around and they don't really have anything to stop it. Now with all those archers, if they do take a straight up fight, Eliona's probably going to end up emerging victorious. And I don't know if Baltoon actually knows how many archers that Eliona has. And if he did, I don't think he would be trying to get offensive with this.
Yeah, this is a very, very confident move out of Mr. Baltoon here. The Mangonel in that mix as well. Definitely not something you want to face right now. This tiny wall here from Mr. Roos is going to be so hard to get up, especially with the villagers building them so slowly. Now, this does look to be a little bit of an engage. The spearmen are at the front here, but the archers are showing their bows, and it looks like he's running back. Let's see if he's going to turn around and take a favorable trade here. The horses set their eyes on that villager as well, but this is a very scary army at the front of his base. Men-at-arms at the back, though.
Oh my god, a third town center.
Wow.
Oh my god. So that's, I mean, Eliona, because he has this army that's going to prove to be effective against Baltoon's army composition, he's going to take the resources on the map, right? He's going to go out, he's going to try to find, some areas to take food, and then he's going to go back to get some farms. He's got 2 sacred sites as well with 3 of those relics. So he's going to have the potential, if he continues on this high wood economy, which is what he has. Remember, as the Ayubids, you don't need siege engineering. You could just make them bad boys. And we're probably going to see some siege coming up. I know there's one Manjanique in the back for him, Baltoon. Going to be adding some as well. Horse archers getting a little cheeky. Oh, my God. That's what you're seeing him pay off, Whamen. You have some of these villagers that end up going down. If these horse archers die, whatever. But you didn't really want them in the fight anyway. So being able to have a front like Baltoon has, continuing to be defensive while raiding in the back, this is just going to give Baltoon time. And even though those horse archers end up going down, most of them, if not all of them, will end up going down, they served a purpose. And I'm content with that.
Those horse archers are doing an amazing bit of work here because this is solidifying Baltoon's lead in terms of villagers so quickly. Look at that 20 villager difference right now. And I don't think that Eliona knows what to do against that. In his eyes, he's just like, okay, I just need to kill this. But we can now see with the resources per minute here, there's still a lot of wood coming in here from Mr. Baltoon. And you see those hunting cabins being spread out. That's a lot of farms set up too. So Baltoon, with this amount of villagers, it's risky, right? Because you are facing off against a pretty big army too, but he's trying to get these wooden fortresses everywhere as well, just to protect himself. but also provide that little bit of map awareness when you don't have about 6 scouts running around. And in this case, he has 0.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult, especially because of the fact of these walls, right, from Eliona. It's going to be difficult to kind of scout what you're seeing. Baltoon wasn't able to finish that giant wall that he had, which was rather bold to get in the center. So Baltoon continuing to just kind of go off of what Eliona had previously. And he had a bunch of archers, he had horsemen, so he's continuing with the men-at-arms. It's really nice to know that that is the composition that would work for him. A lot of it because of his food is stabilized because of all of the farms that he was making. Gets a little bit of gold trickle from the high trade house and the hunting cabin, so you're going to be able to get that as well. But don't look now, Whamen, as Cow is showing us. Look at what Eliona's doing. He's hoarding for Imperial.
And it's going to be quite spicy once it kicks in, but the thing is, he needs to find a way to not engage before this without giving up the jig. But those archers are getting some good connections. The Mangonel coming here from Baltoon, just making sure that he doesn't get a favorable trade here too easily. Goes a pretty okay shot, all things considered, but Eliona doesn't want to let Baltoon know that he is busy aging up behind this. Still acting very aggressive, because the moment he pulls back now, that's when Baltoon knows. And now that Mangonel is also quite far out, Eliona does have a pretty okay bank, and Baltoon is nowhere near aging up himself. But this could change at any moment. Eliona needs to be careful here. And Baltoon not having... Oh, I say not having a scout, but he does have a scout now. He needs to be able to see what's going on. There's now 2,000 food here from Eliona. This man is drowning in resources, and he's going to be able to take on almost anything Baltoon throws at him and remax his army.
Yeah, I mean, look at the farm transition that Eliona was able to do. And that's what the Ayubids can do if you do it effectively, right? He got a lot of map control with those horsemen. So on the back end, he might have had a couple horse archers that took down some villagers. But for the large majority of the game, Eliona's villagers were relatively untouched. You're able to get your wood. You're able to get your farm transition going. And you said Baltoon trying to get to Imperial Age. He now has the resources for it. Because he was pop capped already, it's not like he was going to spend his food on anything anyway. So getting the high armory up is going to be so important because those mangonels get cheaper, and you need to hoard enough for adjustable crossbars. We're going to talk about it over and over again. Once you get to the late game and you get mangonels, if you don't get this technology, you're asking to lose. The amount of damage that a mangonel could do with adjustable crossbars, especially with how many you're able to pump out at Imperial, makes those ranged masses go away.
And I've seen that in action, especially when you get to the point where your armies are just too big to be able to micro those effectively. And especially when you're playing as Rus, that has that ability to get those cheap mangonels out. You see, he gets the upgrade instantly. With only 3 mangonels on the board, he cancels everything else and is like, hey, I know what is important. But keeping in mind, he doesn't have gold for his other upgrades. Right now, he's trying to afford them as they come all out, but this is starting to get scary. He did have a lot of stone in the bank, though. I really want to see what he did with that stone. Is there a keep somewhere, Cow? There's a keep somewhere on the gold. All right, yes. He got himself a safe keep there. Make sure that his base is protected against anything that looks at him even remotely funny. But that Mangonel upgrade is starting to trickle in. What is that other upgrade to the left of the Mangonel upgrade?
Oh, that's for the teardown speed, the setup. Yeah, siege crew training. Setup and teardown speed of mangonels, it's instant. So you can take a hit, instantly pack up and run away, right? So that's going to be really important. Now, Eliona, really good job getting these sacred sites. We're down to 4 minutes and 30 seconds. So Baltoon needs all of these technologies, and he needs to get them out as soon as possible, because if he doesn't get one of those sacred sites, this game's going to end whether he likes it or not. Don't get me wrong, I do like his position right now. He went with elite men-at-arms against a bunch of archers. The mangonels that are there for Eliona won't be doing that bonus damage against those because they're not a ranged unit. So mangonels going to be coming out for Baltoon. Eliona thinking the best defense is a good offense, trying to find those mangonels. Adjustable crossbars not in. Now is in, but I don't know if they're even going to get a shot off. That's one good hit on the back, but you really need 2 to one-tap this ranged mass. The fact that Baltoon did not see those horsemen charging in must have been dealing with the raids that were on the south side. Losing those mangonels means Eliona bought himself a little bit more time for the sacred victory.
And this is now putting him into this position where, hey, you just lost your one thing that you spent all your resources on. You just lost your unit that you upgraded, you felt was the most important here. And that is the key here. He just spent more than 2,000 resources on something that is completely lost. And now he has such a little bit amount of time to get back into this. Although this push is still looking pretty scary. He did clean up a few of the units at the back here. And the villager count does look less favorable for Baltoon right now. The food was very much idle, but it does look like he's going to be able to decap that sacred site. I say as the army runs on in.
A devastating amount. I thought he was going to decap it too. That's looking at the picture-in-picture, and you saw just like 15 Desert Raiders just come in and eat him for lunch, essentially. But I think for Eliona, the big problem was the archers, right? The archers weren't going to really do anything against some of those men-at-arms. So Baltoon is making a change, and he had 20 hand cannon in the queue. That's going to use the damage that you need. Probably, if he didn't get it already, getting Serpentine Powder from the university might not be a bad idea because of Baltoon having all of those men-at-arms. But now he's got to be thinking about a transition. And transition is what he is going to be doing. He's adding Streltsy to his composition. It looks like those outposts might not be enough to try to take that down. With those 3 minutes, 30 seconds now halted, this is the time that Baltoon needs to kind of set up, get his eco back because he was raiding, lick his wounds a little bit, and then he'll be good to go. Ended up getting taken down by those outposts, but this sacred site looks like it might be going down instead on the western side. So Baltoon needs a little bit of time to get his Streltsy count up because Eliona still has a lot of hand cannoneers. If he's able to do that with some mangonels in the back, I don't know if the Ayubids have the capacity to stop it.
This is a very heavy push here from Baltoon, but keeping in mind, this is what he's got. These are his resources. And Eliona, on the other hand, he is still drowning in them. We do see that cap looking like it's going to be possible here, but the camel's coming in clutch. And they're able to stop this decapping from happening. And the army mass is slowly getting cleaned up. It looks like Eliona might be able to push this one back. And he's got nothing to support against those units at the back here. Those archers are cleaning up everything from the back line, or the hand cannoneers are cleaning up everything from the back line. And tick-tock, that's 3 minutes on the clock.
Yep, you're exactly right. 3 minutes. Eliona has the mobility because of the Desert Raiders that he's using, right? He has the mobility to, if one sacred site's getting decapped, he can kind of run over there, right? If the other one's getting decapped, he could do what he needs to do to run over there. Gets his outposts fortified and will most likely be getting upgrades on them as well. Villager's going to be able to repair that outpost. And he's trying to shell up these defenses, right? Making sure that those outposts, especially with the bombard emplacements, if he does have the ability to use them, could really take down a Streltsy mass. So that's what he's banking on. Baltoon does have some mangonels. He's got 3, another one in the queue, but adding some bombards as well because you're going to need some heavy hitters to take down those outposts and make sure your Streltsy stay alive.
The problem is, this is a perfect transition here from Eliona as well. Again, just getting those horsemen. He knows what he needs to do. He knows what he has resources for as well. And getting his powder there, those hand cannoneers are going to make things explode. Let's go see if that bombard can actually get some work done. Another mangonel comes through for Baltoon. He's now on 4. And yes, those could be quite devastating on the back line. They need to get there. And with that's going to be 31 horsemen. You're really going to struggle taking those down. This is going to be the final push here for Baltoon. He realizes this is it. So let's see if he's going to be able to close this out. He does not have a lot of those chunky units. He's got those Streltsy that you mentioned, but those towers, they do pretty well against them.
Yeah, I mean, this is the last resort, and Cal perfectly looking at the vision for Eliona. He knows what sacred site that he's going to go for, right? Because of the vision that the outposts have, you're going to be able to find it. And now with that bombard coming in on the eastern side, maybe provide some firepower. Eliona trying to get a keep up on the western side, which I think is going to be safe. Horsemen trying to get a flank over there on the eastern side, and Desert Raiders making that ranged mass up to try to fight the power that those mangonels have. But they can still have devastating damage. That bombard being safe, a lot of the Streltsy just creating that blocking expedition out of there, and then these mangonels are going to be able to get some good shots on those Desert Raiders. You can see a lot of reinforcements are coming in from Eliona, the horsemen, the Desert Raiders. I don't know if he's going to make them all in time because as Baltoon is starting to get these walls over there on the northeastern side, it means that those horsemen have to go all the way around the Streltsy to try to take down the Mangonels. Whamen, I mean, I thought it looked pretty good. I don't think Baltoon has enough Streltsy for this.
It just looks like he traded as well as he could. Those Mangonels hit the best of the army, but with no time on the clock, he knows he's desperate. And Elyona's spending every bit of food that he has in his bank, knows this is it. And just like that, it looks like Elyona will get a game on the board. MarineLord actually guiding his teammate to victory against someone like Baltoon, who is so much higher rated in this matchup. Beautiful play here from Elyona, and an amazing timing on getting those Mangonels completely taken out at such a critical point in the game. So I just don't think that Baltoon could recover from that. Once you let those Mangonels die that you just invested that many resources into, it's going to be really hard to turn the game back onto your table, sir.
And, he pretty much did everything he could, right? Like, he even used villagers to build walls. And I think he was trying to repair those mangonels also. But getting those walls because he saw the flank going on the eastern side, so Baltoon quick-walled, and it's a really heads-up play. He just ended up getting ran over. I feel like for Elyona, he was able to continuously produce all of those. For Baltoon and the archery ranges, or how many he had, trying to get those Streltsy up there and getting that mass he might have originally, but you saw there was no reinforcements, and it ended up closing the game out. So really good for Elyona. Like we said, any game that Elyona gets is going to be really important.
And that's exactly it. We're getting closer to that 13 points that they need. So if MarineLord's team can get 3 more games out of the next 2 series, they win. And Beasty, he's 2 points behind. Baltoon, the only way for them to even this out is if Baltoon wins both of these next ones. And honestly, I don't even know if that's going to be enough, because the next matchup, MarineLord has the cream of the crop right now. He is Anatan, and nobody is looking like they can take Anatan down.
Yeah, I mean, Anakin's one of the best players out there. I remember watching him in War Chief Club by Rising Empires a long, long time ago, and continuing to hone his craft. Now he streams, and he's been playing, being the top on the ladder, or at least the top 3, as he continues to make that climb. So Anatan is quite the scary beast for the last series, and we'll see if Anatan is going to end up closing this entire tournament out. But for this game number 4, Whamen again. Elyona getting that win, it's really important. Can he get another one on a cheeky map like Canal? I think there's potential.
Canal is just the map that really puts your big brain to the test, right? When you're playing on a map like Canal, it is brain work, it is dream work, it is teamwork, it is everything. The problem with Canal is you preemptively react to what you think your opponent is going to be doing. So now the question is, what would these players actually do versus what are their coaches going to tell them to do? And I have a feeling that MarineLord is someone who... I see Cal just let out a scream and I didn't know why, and now I know why. Tim! What are we gonna do? It's Japan against Japan! Ooh.
The ninjas are taking over.
No.
It's
Not like
it's
this.
there's going to be some docks, and there's going to be some discounted fishing ships, and there's going to be ninjas on both sides, and I don't know which ninja is going to be what. They're all going to be flying at each other, taking hacks out of each other. If you've ever seen a Jackie Chan movie, now's an opportunity for a sequel, because we are going to see some mixed martial arts come out from these shinobi.
I feel like it doesn't matter who ages up first. With Shinobi, you still have exactly the same thing happening on both sides. Maybe. No, we won't see a non-Shinobi opening. I'm trying to think here. Is there any shenanigan that one player can pull over the other one? And honestly, I have no idea. I feel like the Shinobi that gets the first hit off and kills the other Shinobi is just going to be that much further ahead. So, do we have a battle of Shinobis? Do we have a battle of Shinobis in your base trying to kill villagers? It's just going to be chaotic. And definitely we're going to see more than one dock on each side, because when there's Shinobis on the map, you can't stop at one. You need to be producing some ships.
Oh my god, yeah. If you only have one dock and it gets sabotaged, you're like, okay, I guess I just can't make anything anymore. So you definitely need a little bit. The extra wood that you're saving from the fishing boats can help you out as well. And I think it's really going to be difficult or interesting in this mirror is who actually gets to Castle Age, who wants to get that power spike with the mounted samurai, right? Because that is pound for pound, that's Japanese's best unit, and the reason why Japanese plays the same way just about every game is because of getting the floating gate and because of getting those mounted samurai that quickly. So, how long are they going to stay in feudal? How long are they going to have these navy battles before that happens?
I honestly want to see someone going fast castle behind this, giving up the water and trying to take control of that. But I know it's not the thing that might prove to be the easiest. What if both sides decide to go fast castle and we just see a bunch of mounted samurais running into one another? But we do have the Onamusha as well, which I think is going to be the key here. Because if you are playing against someone who is very happy going for mounted samurai, your Onamusha is going to be the counter unit that is just as mobile. So I feel like raids will be the deciding factor here, the reaction speed. And after seeing Eliona play very, very quickly with MarineLord in another game, I feel like Eliona might be ready for that type of multitasking. Baltoon, he's got the raw power. Let's see if he can take down that killer combination.
Yeah, I mean, I think Wayman, when it comes to the actual Japanese mirror matchup, I don't think I've ever casted a Japanese mirror before. This is definitely the first time. So we're going to experience it all together and we're going to see what they do because Japan, it was one of those civs that was picked the highest when it came out, obviously because it's new, right? With the Byzantines as well. But they really, in my personal opinion, in terms of power, they really dropped off. I get on hybrid maps, obviously, they're going to be good on water because of all of the naval bonuses and fishing economy bonuses that they have. On land, you're probably never going to see them in this tournament.
And I feel like you don't need to see every civilization everywhere. And that's a thing a lot of people forget. You get to see civilizations that are just so perfectly well rounded, that they're versatile, like HRE. And that is why we see them banned in every single game. But Japanese just has a very unique place in hybrid and water maps that I think no Civ can match. And that's why we got Japan versus Japan. Keeping in mind, guys, that the deciding on which civilization you're taking is you choose two civilizations and your opponent decides which one to snipe. And both of these players ended up with Japanese. So let's go see what Mr. Baltoon in the red is cooking. We see both of them sending their villagers to the river. They will be placing their docks in this canal, trying to get that lead over the other.
Yeah, immediately sending the villagers over. And obviously for Japanese, that's good, right? Because those fishing boats are a little bit cheaper. So you're going to be able to pump them out pretty quickly and get to feudal age when you need to. So in terms of the builds for both of these players, I would imagine they would be similar. But the first derivation of the mirror, farmhouses at different places. So maybe we have two different schools of thought for a Japanese mirror. I don't know even with these professional players. I don't know how often they experience a Japanese mirror. So we'll see what happens.
And now people might be like, what's the difference here? Beasty is a big proponent of putting your house as close to your TC as possible so that you don't waste time running around. MarineLord is a little bit more of a risk taker, and you can see that with him getting his villager out there. He's also not wasting much time. Every little bit of food counts. That villager is straight onto the berries, and he's just going to gather food from there. Baltoon, though, he's on the other side of the map gathering sheep because that is not a healthy amount of sheep. Eliona getting a much bigger set of sheep there attached to his scout.
Yeah, and most of the time, I mean, for Japanese, just in a vacuum, they're not one of the civilizations that sheep are like make or break your game, right? Because usually once you get to that feudal age and then you research Tawara, the berries end up being a pretty viable food source to get. you know, so most of the time you're going to see them all go to berries. And then you have a lot of the food if you have a little bit of extra sheep, but then, you know, if you're playing on a land map, you have Cure Storehouse to help you with farms. So the fish end up being an important role. Now, if we're taking a look at the spawns of both of these players, I know that this is the way the script is for the spawn, but these golds are very much in harm's way right near the water.
Now, this actually happened in the previous during yesterday as well. One of the players, their gold spawned on the other side of the river.
Yikes.
It was a very, very close river, but it was definitely very far. But both of these players having very questionable golds here. So this means that if one of them loses the canal, they're going to be in a lot of danger. We do see that MarineLord went for a little bit of a later gold placement there, but he has more villagers over there anyway. So he should be able to match that age up speed. And we see both of these players having pretty much equal fishing boats, 3 on either side. So pretty mirror-based mindset, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about getting the feudal age, right? I mean, obviously for the docks and Dark Age, the only thing you can make is fishing boats. So to actually harass your opponent, getting to feudal age is very important, and especially on a hybrid map like this where you share the same water and you're relatively close to one another, right? Getting that feudal age button and hitting that button first means that you're going to have the ability to get that first ship, and you could take the battle to your opponent rather than the other way around. So Eliona is still struggling to get there. He still hasn't hit the button. Baltoon's got 5 villagers on that Coca Township, and I think by the time Eliona actually hits that button, Baltoon might be halfway done.
Now, the problem is when he clicks this up and he starts with a 6, I was going to say he needs to make sure that he gets more villagers on this age up. And he does. He realizes, hey, I may have clicked up a little bit late. And that Shinobi is just going to arrive a little bit earlier from Baltoon. But again, these are just mere seconds. I don't think they're going to make that much of a difference, especially in the early game with Shinobis. Scout versus Scout now, but the villager gets pulled. Villager getting that shiv out, and Eliona, the Scout reigns supreme for this battle. He does need to be careful. Baltoon did take another hit from that Scout, so he does not need to look at any of those wildlife creatures too heavily because they might bite back.
Yeah, especially that boar you see pretty comically with boar pulls. You know, getting rid of scouts, getting rid of villagers, and all that kind of stuff. But not going to be the case here. Baltoon's Coca Township is completed at a pretty good time. 4 minutes 36 seconds, it looks like. So that first Shinobi will be getting there. Obviously, it is for free, and then we can take a look at what Baltoon wants to get for a ship. Now, this is a heads-up play from Eliona because he realized his opponent is going to feudal age first, right? So what do? You put that wall up there just to make sure that whatever Baltoon's got cooking up in terms of a navy, he's not going to be able to get there, and your fish are going to be safe.
And you see, Eliona is not instantly queuing up a ship. This might just be because he did not plan to be that on time with these ships. But let's see what he's going to go for first. It should be a Springald ship as he's aging up just a little bit later. That first galley is out from Baltoon now. It's going to start moving across the map. And it doesn't look like this villager is going to finish his wall, but he doesn't need to because he's going to have a Springald ship on his side. Now, he does get pushed off here, and that wall will eventually get punished. But Baltoon not queuing up a second ship either. He's got a second Shinobi, though, which Eliona did not invest in.
Look at these Shinobi. I had a feeling this was going to happen. Oh my god, they both get a disguise. This is just... I don't know why this is comical to me, because you have these Shinobi, like, they're trying to, like, find some hits and trying to get it, like, a cheeky stab one way. They're pulling out other stops, right, to try to get sneaky with it. But if you're an opposite Shinobi, you probably know the tricks of the other one. So it's going to be very difficult to be stealthy when you both have the same kind of training. So Shinobis on both sides trying to get some damage in another dock from Baltoon, getting close to the walls just so that reinforcements come in very quickly, and going to be adding a Springald ship as well, because that arrow ship ain't going to do it.
And the problem is now he's invested more in Shinobis than he has into the ships, and this is starting to look a little bit scary. Losing that scout as well is a very heavy loss here for Baltoon. Losing a villager alongside that, even more. it looks to be the case that this is already going to be decided that early on, which is something I never thought I would say at this stage of the game. Because if Baltoon, who is significantly behind right now, doesn't find a way to claw back into this, it is going to be really, really rough. This is going to be up to the micro of the water as well. And let's see if Baltoon will reign supreme. And we do see a lot of wood there in the bank from Mr. Baltoon, but there's a few more ships on the side of Alyona.
Yeah, he definitely has a couple more, and he's adding a demo ship too. I think demo ships, obviously, we know the power that they have, right? Taking down all of those springald ships, you have that area effect, you could take down multiple at once. But on a map like Canal, where a lot of ships are like stumbling over each other, you can get some really juicy demo hits. And especially with part of that wall that Eliona has too. Those ships can only use that canal. Make a little bit of a choke point there, and you could get a really good display of a demo ship, some good fireworks. Shinobi getting a little bit of a shock, running in there. They do so much damage per hit. You're going to see how quickly those villagers end up going down. That's 2 for Baltoon, so you can put him in the lead in terms of worker kills, 2-1.
Now, that's exactly what he needed to get back into this. He realized, okay, I lost that initial pull. I did mess up here and there, but let me fix that. And he fixed it perfectly. Really, really well played there by Baltoon. Now, we see another dock coming down for Alyona. Alyona definitely keeping in mind that he's Japanese. Both of these players are Japanese. They will be able to get those arrow slits basically for free, considering that this is Japan, and they do get that little bit of stone for free during all of this. Another villager getting pushed off. Baltoon cannot afford to lose another one. And the dock will probably get cancelled quite quickly.
Yeah, Baltoon really wants that dock up, and you're exactly right. For naval arrow slits, as looks like a shinobi ends up going down and not a worker. But getting a dock up like that, because you're right, with that passive stone income from gathering gold, he does have 158, so he has the ability if he wants to get naval arrow slits. But he wants a forward dock, so it actually matters. And if you're able to get it near an opponent's dock, if you're able to, set your front right where that dock is, it's going to prove to be effective. And then you can just kind of move your way downstream.
And that seems to be the case. He's finally getting that opening to actually do that. The Yumi coming out here, finally. A little bit of action from a different unit here. The wall gets deleted by Alyona. He realizes, I need to stop this thing and I need to stop it now. That ship almost had a pretty good connection. Springald ships looking at that villager very angrily, but the dock will go up and the villager is running forward to his own death, I guess.
And I think what that villager was doing, he might have been helping maybe to do some repairs, or maybe the villager thinks he's a boat. I have no idea.
But I think that's the case.
Hopefully he'll be able to figure it out. Maybe get some repairs on that dock, because I'm pretty sure arrow slits is going to come out on that, and it is. Eliona's is going to be the first one to go in because of how many springald chips Baltoon has. Right now he's sitting on 6. You could make quick work of this dock. Maybe before, if you get it right when the arrow slits actually get completed, we'll see if it actually does a little bit of damage. Eliona sees all of the springald chips, adding some demos. Hopefully he's going to be able to focus it down if you're a Baltoon fan, because the amount of damage that one demo might be able to do is catastrophic. Naval arrow slits coming in on both sides. Springald chips just essentially shooting at each other. The demo actually targeting the dock to try to get rid of those arrow slits, push Baltoon back. He still has a villager out there trying to do repairs on some of the boats, maybe get a repair on some of the dock. But overall, for Baltoon, because he's microing this effectively, even though that dock goes down, his navy stays alive.
And this is a really scary navy to face, but that's a very big loss. Considering that that's the stone he had for an arrow slit, that's going to be the only he's going to have for a while. And losing all the shinobis at the back there, he did cause a little bit of havoc in the base, but not any more villager kills coming through there. We do see a villager kill from the other side, though. Alyona picking up one of those bad boys. Bodies on the floor, he says. And now Baltoon needs to be a little bit careful here. If he loses this, a lot of his eco is on water. And we see both of these players floating quite a bit of food. So are we going to be seeing a castle click up with 17 on gold? Alyona is saying yes. Very much yes.
Yeah, it kind of looks like it, doesn't it? I mean, they both took their shots on Navy, right? They both were trying to get rid of the dock to the other player, but it seems like there's a little bit of a ceasefire, because of the walls that are out here, right? So if Eliona wants to do some damage, he's going to need a resounding navy to do that. It's going to take a lot of resources for him to do that as well. And there's a potential of having arrow slits on those docks he might not be aware of whether they are or whether they're not. So both of them going for that castle age. We talked about the mounted samurai a little bit before this game started. We talked about the Onimusha a little bit before the game started. I think you got to make whatever choice you make, it's got to be the right one, because you're getting that map control now. We get to the point of the game where that gold starts to get down a little bit, that wood line starts to go away a little bit, and then you got to go out on the map to get some resources.
Well, we do see an archery range coming out from Iliona's side. So now the question is, what does Baltoon follow up with? Are we going to be seeing Onimusha versus Onimusha? Or is he going to be able to, spice things up a little bit? I feel like with the Shinobi, he did the damage he needed, but this is going to be so important. You can see he's even rallying those boys into the archery ranges. So we see horsemen coming out from Mr. Baltoon or the stables. So we're probably going to be seeing a lot of mounted samurais against those Onimushas. And Onimusha's 6 in the queue already. That's going to be so hard to deal with for Baltoon.
Well, it's a really interesting paradigm, Whamen, because he's getting stables, and he already made his first stable as cows pointing to the horseman, and that's kind of what I'm going to allude to. You see that Eliona makes an archery range, and what can you make out of the archery ranges? Obviously the Onimusha, or you can make Yumi. So if he knows that those are the two things, I would think he would choose to go horseman, but that doesn't end up being the case. Baltoon is going to go with mounted samurai and continue. He thinks that strength of the mounted samurai is going to power through all of those Onimusha, but they can kite really effectively. And even though the samurai get the deflection on that first arrow, they're pretty defenseless against the next 10.
Now the problem here is with those bad boys coming out, they're actually going to need to do some damage. And you're playing against a player with a very mobile army on the side of Eliona. Is Baltoon going to be able to find some damage in all of this? And I feel like he is the guy who could. But at the same time, Eliona is also a guy who could be finding damage. And that's exactly what he's doing. Shutting this down so early on is such a good sign for him. Baltoon now losing that first relic, and Eliona getting the first one already puts him in the driving seat. But that's sort of veteran upgrade to horsemen. So if those horsemen are going to be made, they're going to be made to deal with those Onimushas.
I was going to say, when he saw the first Onimusha, he's like, yeah, forget that. Canceled all the mounted samurai, went for the veteran horseman upgrade, which is obviously going to help you. And then it's going to make Eliona do a transition, right? And the thing of it is, you're going to need something that's not an archery range to help you, right? Because those horsemen are going to do all of that bonus damage. So what is he going to turn into? Maybe he gets his own stable, and maybe he gets some mounted samurai. Maybe he goes in for a barracks transition and adds some spearmen to be more defensive. It remains to be seen. But Eliona's navy and what he's got on water, all of these docks, all of the demo ships, quite explosive of a navy. So I feel like this battle, it was on the water once we got to feudal age. Now that these castle age units are starting to poke their head out, this is going to be more of a land battle.
Now the question is just, where are those mounted samurais going to find the damage they're looking for? We do see some units at the bottom there trying to make it through. Mounted samurai coming through for Eliona as well. And it doesn't feel like Baltoon has an answer to those bad boys though. But the horsemen finding themselves a pack of these Onimushas and going to be able to do a little bit of damage, but they are still going to be able to mostly get out alive.
Yeah, and those horsemen are much more effective against something like an Onimusha than they are against something like a horse archer. Because the horse archer has a base damage of 12, Onimusha has a base of 10. So you're not going to be able to rip through the ranged armor of a veteran horseman as much as you are in an Onimusha. So having to get yourself some other unit is going to prove to be effective. And I really like Eliona's choice of getting mounted samurai because you want to keep your mobility up, right? And he'll have the ability to do that. Everything that he has is going to be on horseback, so he's going to find some areas to raid. He's going to be able to make a front against the horsemen that Baltoon has.
And getting that control on the map is going to determine what happens after the woodline runs out. Because we know TikTok, that happens any moment now. We can see those villagers chopping the last of their trees. Baltoon already moving out with the second TC onto the rest of the map. Now, on the other side, though, the second TC was not a choice from Aliona. Aliona decided to go for that TC upgrade instead, which we'll see how that plays out if the game allows. So that second TC onto the woodline provides a little bit of protection for Baltoon as well. And with the amount of stone that he's hoarding, he could even get that upgraded, making sure that his units are going to be a little bit safer. But these horsemen need to be a little bit more careful.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of nice when you go for the Daimyo like that, just because obviously you're going to be able to use your Bannerman and then a villager pops out, right? So you're going to be able to get some free area there. So definitely a difference in change. I think that's really important with the mirror too, because Eliona's now getting his second TC. He just got 350 of that passive stone, so he will be able to get that town center where Baltoon has been on it for a decent amount of time. Now that he sees,
Now,
if he did see the potential of that second TC there, because they're both forward, it might have a bullseye on it on both sides.
that's the difficulty with this. You both have to move out on the map, and both of you decided to go on the same side. That horseman that scouted exactly when it came up will know that, okay, I'm a little bit in charge here. And at the same time, I see 1,600 food for Baltoon in the bank and no units in queue. And I'm a little bit worried. Are we seeing some shenanigans? But with the amount of gold income, I cannot imagine him trying to pull out anything here. So probably just trying to establish where to put the rest of his units. But let's go see what this looks like. Eliona is not drowning in that much food. He's just making units instead. We now see Onamusha change up coming from Baltoon. So he was just waiting for those archery rangers to finish, then queuing up the change. But that's still a lot of food in the bank. He needs to decide what he's going to be doing with that.
Yeah, I kind of thought there was going to be some Imperial stuff happening, you know, because he was on about like 800, 900 gold, something like that. You could get a gunsmith, you could get a castle of the Crow, and you have some of those trading posts that can act as those treasure troves before you. So it could have been a possibility. I think Baltoon was a little bit scared to do it. It looked like he was trying to. He definitely hoarded, but he might see how many units that Eliona is making and start to panic a little bit, because Eliona is going absolutely all in. Military count is equal, but a lot of what Baltoon has not only is because of the Navy, but horsemen. And I don't know how effective horsemen are going to end up being. The walls are obviously going to help him out. Maybe getting some static defense around here might be pretty good too. But again, this town center, it's got a bullseye on it. And Aliona's looking to kill some villagers here.
It does look very dead even when just looking at these scores. And honestly, this is going to be based on how well they micro this. I know the units aren't the same all around, but the amount of horsemen we see here, this is so easy to let slip through your fingers. He needs to make sure that those don't just slip through. The water mass as well. It looks really scary, and he could be making a move the moment that this connects. Cow is showing us that wall can be deleted, and those bad boys are going to go right through the wall in that moment. The moment he does, he's going to have control over the gold of Ilyona as well.
And he does take that fight, Whamen. You can see the horsemen and the mounted samurai make it up the front line. But now with Baltoon, with how many Onimusha that he had in the queue, looks like he was trying to snipe down the samurai. But man, those horsemen got pretty obliterated. As you can see, a lot of mounted samurai staying alive. There's a lot of horsemen corpses from Baltoon on the back end. He was looking to get enough Musha to try to take down the samurai, but I don't think he had enough in that battle. Now with the defensive advantage, he had some horsemen come in for reinforcements, so Eliona's got to back up. But overall, I kind of thought that Baltoon was going to wipe this a lot more convincingly, but having those Onimusha come in as reinforcements were really good.
The problem for him was those horsemen really, really focused just on the front lines, while the Onimusha were trying to focus down what they could. So with Baltoon now, I wouldn't say losing the trade, still very much dead even. That was very, very expensive though. Aliona losing quite a bit of units there, but you can see there's a ton more mounted samurai, and those are super expensive. Baltoon just doesn't have that same value on his side at the moment or in the bank. So yes, with a lot of horsemen, they're great, but you have to be able to focus down the units at the back as well. Now, the food is running out here, as we can see, and these Japanese villagers are going to need to find something else to do. We do see the farms being placed around the TCs. So there is some kind of transition coming out here, but yeah, there's a lot of production here from Eliona. This man is on the front lines, and he wants to keep producing from here. And honestly, economically, he's looking like he's in a very healthy spot. I feel like the timer of the river is also running out a little bit. You're allowing your opponent to just get all the fish on his side. And I don't know if that water fight is going to be worth it past some point anymore.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that, Wayman, so I'm really glad you went there. Look at the canal. As Cow is panning through it, there's not that much in the way of fish left. We're 22 minutes into the game. You see these fishing boats getting closer and closer to the walls. It looks like Baltoon does have a couple shoreline fish left, but when those run out, Eliona's started to make walls already, so he might be a little bit safer. It might make Baltoon start to get some wood economy, get some farms around some of those daimyo manors and palaces and all of that cool stuff that the Japanese end up getting. Eliona did add some horsemen as well. We talked about the mounted samurai, but is starting to add a little bit of horsemen just because of the Onimusha being as powerful as they are. And trying to get a little bit of a raid, right? On that northern side, looking for areas, trying to take down fishing boats. Probably not going to be as effective as they get springholded to smithereens. And we'll be looking for some raiding potential.
Now, you don't want to lose control of the canal, right? Because the moment you lose control of the canal, your opponent's ships are just going to be parked between your main base and everything outside. And I feel like Eliona is more prepared for that than Baltoon is. So Eliona on this side, he definitely has his production out where he needs it to be. But you can see here, all the Onimusha focus firing, everything on his side, that amount of horsemen doing amazing work, but he needs to be careful. He cannot lose too many of these units. Now, we don't see the water battle, but the land battle is looking fierce. Both of the sides now are having a lot of horses. Onimusha's firing away at the front lines as much as they want. And honestly, I'm a little bit scared of what's happening on the water here, though, because those ships look like they're going to keep pushing forward. Onimusha's getting all those... Oh, they're destroyed. Everything on the front lines, they're all dead. Baltoon getting ahead here, and the water battle also going over to him. And even though he doesn't win with any of the fish, he's just going to be able to park himself between his opponent's base, and the reinforcements will be cut off.
And we saw Eliona lose that battle, right? But the amount of mounted samurai that Eliona had, it really was not cost effective because of all of the Onimusha that were there. Baltoon was just able to spam a bunch of horsemen, which are relatively cheap and obviously cheaper than the mounted samurai, and they were enough of a front to deal with this. And obviously they're going to be able to do some damage against the Onimusha as well. But now Eliona making a transition, going with spears out of the barracks. Issue is, when it comes to the armor that they have, it's not that much in ranged armor, and Onimusha have a decent amount of base damage. So even though they don't get that bonus, they're still going to be able to take them down. Oh my god, Whamen, look at that choke point on the western side. Onimusha are going in single file and losing their lives.
Oh, honestly, they deserved to walk out there victoriously for a very, very fierce battle. They slid right into his DMs and took out as many as they possibly could. And now being pushed off of his gold is going to be key here, because that top gold of Eliona, the second one that was in his base, that bad boy is about to expire as well. So this is going to be very limited edition gold for Mr. Eliona. He needs to think about the next plan. For Baltoon, he's just slowly taking over the rest of the map. You can see the red spreading everywhere. Now villagers starting to wall up on this side of the base as well. And the lake has been cleaned up completely.
Yeah, now with that one gone, don't get me wrong, there wasn't much fish left in that canal, but you could also use the navy that you have because of the canal being so close to the starting town center. You can start to raid villagers with boats. And I know it sounds crazy, but you have the ability to do it if you're able to take down everything. But for Eliona, he really doesn't want to put more onto the water because he would rather deal with on land. He's got a military disadvantage. A little bit is from the ships, but he really needs to get the units to take down these horsemen, take down the Onimusha, and is starting to go into spearmen. Baltoon making the change in his army composition as well. And we're going to see Ona Bugattis, which are really good against horsemen and spearmen. Heads up by Baltoon.
And that demolition ship was very, very optimal in most cases when players are looking away. But Baltoon, he never looks away. He's got 16 eyes and they're all looking at the map. At this point, that army is looking really scary, and I don't know if he's actually going to find a way to take these down. Now, when we're dealing with Bugattis, they're great, especially that they can get onto your backline quite easily, right across the base. But finding a way to kill these with the amount of units you're behind in, Alyona, he's going to struggle with this. And I feel like now that the ships have cleaned up what they need to clean up, this is going to slowly get closer and closer to his base. And honestly, I don't know how he's going to get out of there. He does hold the sacred site for quite a while, man. This man is tick-tock ticking, loving that passive gold coming into his base too.
And he does have a decent amount of gold. We just saw him use it, almost all of it, at the market to try to buy some food because his food was a little down. Think about the units that both of these players are making, right? Eliona with Onimusha, Spearman, Onabugisha. They're obviously a decent amount of food. Flip side, Baltoon, Onabugisha, Onimusha, obviously a decent amount of food. So making sure that you're able to get there. Maybe losing those fishing boats for Eliona really helped. But Baltoon is the one who's pop capped. He's sitting at 200 out of 200. Eliona at about 140, obviously bottlenecked by food, as you can see. He does have a lot in the queue, but in terms of getting those units out, it's going to be a little bit difficult, and I think Baltoon has the ability to reproduce quite easily. Eliona's having to idle some of his villagers that would not being safe anymore, so this could be Baltoon's time to strike and really shut this game down.
Baltoon doesn't realize how far economically ahead he is at the moment, because these villagers, even though the difference isn't that big, that's a lot of idle time that's between them. The gold has expired. He's just denying every bit of resource that Alyona needs to claw back into this. And we always said in StarCraft, did you play, did you not play? And Alyona's supply is telling us exactly how this game is going. The gunsmith getting plopped down now here from Baltoon. He's just going to be snacking on those extra free units. The ships are between the bases. That's when you know. That's when you know you've got control.
And you know, this is what makes those previous fights by Baltoon so important, because he cost effectively took better fights than Eliona did. He was able to pop cap first, and then with all of that food and gold, you might as well hit the it button, and then you're going to be able to do it. So we're seeing just over time, just continuing to dwindle for cost effectiveness. Now, Eliona does have a Mangonel, could be able to get a good hit on some of those Onimusha, but because of the base HP, it's going to take a little bit of time for those Onimusha. It takes 2 Mango hits in order to take them down. Onabugisha on the eastern side trying to take that Mangonel, but ends up getting cleaned up. Now that Gunsmith is in, however, Eliona might be starting to think, yeah, I'm pretty behind, because he's nowhere close.
Now, when you see your opponent in a mirror matchup getting a gunsmith, you know you're just going to be behind with the units. Baltoon spending those tickets as quickly as he could with that max pop on his side. We do see the hand cannoneers on his side. But now these units are starting to engage, and Eliona knows this is the only chance he has at closing this out, because it's just going to snowball from here. The ships are doing amazing work at cutting off everything that tries to pass. You shall not pass, he says. Baltoon's villagers a little bit far out from the base here, trying to find some resources to work on. But the fishing ships are still going strong on Baltoon's side.
Yeah, and Baltoon knows if he's able to hold this, get some of his Imperial upgrades, he's obviously in a good place, to the point where it's not even holding. He could get offensive with it. Mangonel's caught in harm's way. A good, oh my god, that micro from Baltoon, making sure his Onimusha, the heads up that he was there already, and the ability to micro around it, so none of those rocks hit his Onimusha are so important. And we're going to see it in this battle. So not only does Eliona have some Onimusha, but he went into Samurai. I don't really like the look of Samurai against a lot of these Onimusha. I think they're going to get cut down pretty quickly. Eliona's military mass starting to dwindle while he's trying to queue up more units. But I think, Whamen, this damage is done.
It looks like this is the game-winning push here from Baltoon. Those Onimushas just getting into the wood line, making sure that they clean up every villager who dares look at them with a little bit of an angry face. But the boys are going down. Mangonel trying to soul defeat this army. He gets off a decent shot here and there. But the Bugattis are running at the speed of light, killing everything in their wake. Now the Mangonel goes down, and there's just no way for Eliona to claw back into this. He's got some idle villagers. The villagers are in shambles. He decides to call it, and Eliona put up a good fight. But it was not enough against this combination of Beasty and Baltoon.
You know, Baltoon dodged every mango shot. Like literally every single one. To the point where, when you dodge some mangonel shots, maybe you get some of your units end up getting hit just slightly. Baltoon made those mangonels look like a complete waste of resources. And for how many the Eliona had, being able to take them down was a really clutch. And because those Onabuhisha, like, they're pretty quick. They can get through enemy lines, they can kind of take them down. So he tried to get that siege superiority. Not quite the case. You can take a look at the resource that Baltoon had, that second town center, getting it a little bit earlier and a little less idle time from him really paid off in this mirror. And Whamen, look how much food he had. I mean, it might have been a little bit of the canal, but 36,000 food to Eliona's almost 28. You're not going to come back from that one.
The problem is when you start food trends or farm transitioning, how are you just gonna ever catch up when your opponent has his farm set up correctly? And I feel like Alyona did have the unit composition for a while there, but he kept taking the straight up fights, and Baltoon was just a little bit more active on the map. Early game, Alyona did an amazing job at keeping Baltoon on his toes, and I think his trades were fantastic. But getting into the late game, Baltoon's experience in most of the tournaments that he played, it really, really showed. Guys, please enter the giveaway by typing !giveaway. After this game, we will be giving away a full set of SteelSeries gear. So I can see you guys typing it in there. Hell yeah, type a little bit more. We're going to give away some stuff. So get yourselves ready. Sorry, Tim, that was me doing an impression of you.
I sound like that? Are you kidding?
No, no, no. I'm
I'm East
joking.
Coast US. Okay, my
Oh,
pronunciation is stellar. Okay,
um,
Cal, and you know what, Cal? That's enough out of you. My American is showing, and now I'm gonna start to invade. Sorry, I don't know where I was going with
now,
it.
we did hear a little screech from Cal, and guys, it doesn't mean that he's in pain. You guys may not even have heard him. It's just he's in Tim in my ears, and he makes us look crazy. But the screams were not because there's two black dots on the screen. Those are both Abbasid flags.
Oh,
So I must say, I think for a long time we haven't seen mirrors in many tournaments. And I know it was because we have had a limited Civ pool and they were boring. But honestly, every single mirror I've watched in the last week, I've been very happy. I think even this Japan game, you saw the different types of play styles, you saw the decisions and how every single small decision you make can result in what it did. So I think Abbasid is exactly that as well. You get Eco Wing, which is going to mean we're going to be here for the next 3 hours,
oh my god.
or we're going to get Military Wing and a little bit of a push here and there, a little bit of action, ba ba ba. But I have a feeling we're going to sit here for a while.
Yeah, maybe we could do a little for this prediction instead of winning a game. How many town centers are we gonna get in this game? So
Mm,
with both, I mean, Abbasid, we all know Abbasid is the boom sieve, right? They're able to do it very quickly. They have economic wing. Your crescents are fertile. Your foodstuffs are fresh, and you can just boom into as many villagers as you potentially want. You've even seen some players, if they're going for a meme strategy, getting 200 villagers and building keeps all over the place. I know, Whammon, that is something that you have done with the Abbasid dynasty. I remember that. The For Abbasid now, in terms of getting offensive, not really the case because usually, I mean, obviously they're not playing against each other, so they're
mm.
more so holding all of those town centers. Does one of these want to derivate from the usual Abbasid gameplay and stop them?
Well, I think this will come down to scouting. And that's exactly what I love to see about the coaches we've got here today. Now, for those of you who may be tuned in late or you're not aware, MarineLord and his channel, he's busy coaching Aliona in very French. So if you're not French speaking, you will just hear a lot of yelling. And Beasty, on the other hand, he's coaching, not on stream, Mr. Baltoon. And both of these players are trying to win against one another with the best players in their ears. Now, I think the Abbasid decisions that we're going to be seeing are not the decisions of these two Chads on the battlefield, but rather the coaches yelling at them from behind. We do see the score here now 10 for MarineLord and 9 for Mr. Beastyqt. So Considering we're going into Kiliardi Anatans, we are definitely going to be at a very tough point for Team Beastyqt, especially if they start this game down 1.
Yeah, I think this is a more pivotal game than you guys might not realize, because looking at the score, I mean, we could tell, who's favorites in between Anatan and Kiljardi. Obviously, both of them are fantastic players, but it would be very difficult for me to bet against Anatan right now at this point in his career. So if that's the case, then every Eliona win is so important. Getting this one into a 3-2 instead of a 4-1, the score differential, even though it's one game, is kind of crazy. It's either +3 or +1, which could really change how that last series comes into play. So in this pivotal game number 5, it's Abbasid versus Abbasid, Baltoon and Eliona. Whamen, I'm really hoping that there are some aggressive military wing plays. I'm praying for it.
Now, I don't want to see a military wing because I think that will be very sad if you think of a push that might end the game so quickly. I do want to see these guys fight it out. I've seen Eliona really shine in this tournament specifically. I think he's definitely learned a few things about his gameplay that he didn't know about before. And I don't think Eliona is going to be where he was before this tournament after this. He's definitely going to be able to take on people a lot bigger than him. And he's shown that in these previous games that he's played. So I want this to be a little bit longer because I know Eliona does really good in aggressive games, but he doesn't always outlast his opponents in the late game. Baltoon is someone who has a little bit more experience with that, but honestly, may the best Chad win, and right now, it could be either. I mean, Abbasid's worst win rate, right? Abbasid versus Abbasid. Best and worst.
yeah, you're kind of on that. I mean, Abbasid in a nutshell, they do have. I want to feel like they have a couple matchups that aren't too great for them. If you have a potential of a civilization to get a lot of feudal age stuff, a lot of tempo. One of the things, if I know that my opponent is going to play Abbasid, the one civ that I'm probably picking is Byzantines. Just to have the longbowmen, horsemen, and limitine, add with some Kurosifins. Now, even though that burn the Abbasid Dynasty, if they do go eco-wing, they do get some burn armor, but enough of those rams will end up taking down town centers, and the military production you get from those Byzantines just knows no bounds. So with the Abbasid, because they're playing against each other, right, you have a potential, if you wanted, to go, oh, son of a... going out of both sides. So we are going to see some booming stuff here. Villagers on straggler trees, and probably some stone gathering as well. It's going to be crazy. Everybody buckle up.
So, guys, in the chat right now, how many TCs are you predicting? So, on every side, let's get the Twitch chat to predict. Eliona first and Baltoon second. Are we seeing a 3-3? Are we seeing a 4-3?
Oh my god. Bella's saying 5 versus 4. That would be crazy.
I hope not.
Centers. Oh my god.
I really hope not. That will be a very long day.
So I think it's kind of important, as both of these civs are not going to interact with each other for a certain amount of time. So we got a lot of time to kill. So let's talk about the economic wing in general, right? Why is the Abbasid dynasty picking economic wing all the time? Why are they getting that boom? And Cal, if you can go over to the House of Wisdom, we'll kind of go over some of the technologies that are there. If you can click on it, thank you very much. Fertile Crescent is what you are getting in economic wing, and that is for how much or how cheap that technology is. It's one of the most insane technologies that this game has to offer. Reduce the cost of economic buildings by 30%. Well, what is an economic building? A mill counts with that fresh foodstuffs, reducing villager costs by 35%. A farm costs that get reduced. Town center costs get reduced. So you're able to do all of these things, getting the town centers, getting farms, getting all of those things at such a quick transition that it's very difficult, if somebody is an aggressive civ, to deal with it. And a lot of the aggressive civs that are out, like, say, if you want to say a French, they use cavalry. If you want to use, so because of the fact that camels do exist in feudal age, you do have the potential to get a camel archer. You really don't want to go with cavalry either.
Now, I can imagine both of these players have a different play in mind. As you can see, one of them has 8 on stone, and the other only has 5. So I do think this is going to make a bigger change, because Baltoon has just started producing his second TC at the back there, on top of the stone though, but he's removed every one of those bad boys from stone. So while Alyona on this side, he keeps those boys focused on the stone. And I mean, is Baltoon actually just going to go for 2 TC? But I think not, especially with that second TC on top of the stone as well. He might just be finishing it up, getting as many villagers early on, and then going for a bit more. So once that TC finishes before, he might get a 1 villager lead, and let's see if the third one is coming on out. Alyona definitely going for his third, but let's go see if there's going to be a fourth.
Yeah, I think because of those town centers being on the stone, usually they end up going there, then villagers end up getting queued to the stone. So it just decreases the amount of time that they have. So second town center coming up, more stone and more wood lining up for these players. So yep, that's town center number 3. Do we have 4? Anybody?
Any takers?
I feel like I'm an auction master at this point. Just for how many, it's just going to keep climbing and climbing.
We have 3 towns and the 3 towns. Can we get a 4? Can we get a 4? Alyona, not sure if he wants to commit to this, but Baltoon with the 11 on stone has been pulled off and putting it right next to the other one. Do we have a 4? There's 3 more on stone. Does this mean we're going to get a 4th? Baltoon says he's in. He's committed to a 4th. And the scout knows. Baltoon's scout on the other side of the map, he knows what's cooking. And Alyona popping it right there on top of the deer.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, for both of these players, they could just use all of the stone and get as many town centers as they want. Because, looking at military, obviously because you're scouting effectively, you're doing a good job at that, the military count is still just scouts. So there's really no reason not to do this. It's not like anyone's going to come knock on your door anytime soon. Most of these players, they're going to get some of these town centers, they're going to build them, they're going to get a bunch of villagers, and then go ahead and get to Castle Age where we actually see these players interact with each other. Now, they're just never going to do that. It's almost like they signed a peace treaty before the game started.
I am just so confused at how many TCs we're going to be seeing this game. It looks like this is just going to be the final one. He just force dropped off the wood from the side. And it looks like Alyona might be calling it at TC number... That's TC number 4, right? TC number 4.
Mhm.
Yes, TC number 4, right? Right? It looks like he's calling it. On Baltoon's side, he's pulled everything off of stone. It looks to be the case. We have 4-4. Everybody who has voted 4-4, you get absolutely nothing. Congratulations.
Oh, man. I'm glad you took a page out of my book for that one.
You're so good at that.
Taking a look at these town centers. You got 4 on each side, and now you're looking at where you're going to put these villagers, right? Baltoon actually has a pretty decent amount of sheep, which is super nice. And they're starting to make farms, right? Why are they making farms? There's so much sheep there. There's berries they can use, whatever. You know the reason why, ladies and gentlemen? Because they can. If you click on one of the villagers and take a look at how much each farm costs, 53 instead of 75. So you're going to be able to get that pretty quick. And also, you're going to be able to get your technologies, your eco-technologies, like Baltoon is getting with stone mining, double broad axe, all of that kind of stuff. And now, it's hitting the Castle Age button. That's next on their agenda.
Now, once you hit Castle Age, is this where the action starts? Or do we just keep booming? Do we just allow ourselves to get a little bit further ahead? So I think that's the question I have for most of this game. Is Baltoon now going to go into Lancers and just try to get a kill here and there? While Alyona, on the other hand, just focuses on getting that big push ready for the killing blow. And do we see military wing out of both of these players?
I mean, you kind of expect for these players to start doing some walling, and that's what Alyona is doing, just to make sure exactly what you described, right, with any kind of rating if they do try to get that potential, it's not there. If they have the walls in the accurate places, they're going to be able to deal with it. Now, there's potential to, again, you talk about military wing in Castle Age, could be an option. Eliona is hitting that button. I was curious to see, just because of how this is ending up working with how many villagers, do you go culture and try to get Imperial Age as fast as possible? But that Abbasid power spike, once that economy starts to pay off a little bit, really ends up being castle. So the military wing is going to help you get that boot camp, is going to help you get composite bows for your archers. You can get some crossbowmen, all of those castle age units. You could pretty much get anything you want, because for the past 10 minutes, they've done as much damage to each other as I have.
Which is pretty amazing, considering how good you are at this video game, Tim. Hot damn. Now, as we can see here with the farm transition on the side of Baltoon, I feel like he's already set himself up for that initial aggression. Because yes, he still has enough sheep, but it doesn't look the same on Aliona's side. And even though this is very cheap, it does make a significant difference if you have 10 farms versus if you have 0, even if you are allowed to get those pocket resources. Because it just means everything is going to last a little bit longer. But now with Aliona getting that stable, we're going to be seeing double stables, which means double lancers. And this is going to be a little bit tough to deal with here for Baltoon, I think. Especially with the walls not being up just yet. So that could be a sneaky horse into your base, good sir.
Well, you know, Whamen, what I think, like, I'm gonna play devil's advocate with you again. And just having those, like, lancers trying to get some damage or whatever the case, I don't even know if it's worth it, because look at where Baltoon's base, like, look at how he structured his base. He has 4 town centers within spitting distance of each other. If you try to raid that gold, you have 15 plus 24. You have 39 arrows shooting at you from all of the villagers getting garrisoned. So how valuable is that going to be? We're going to see, because Eliona is going with queuing a bunch of these lancers. He's got 5 Baltoon, adding some crossbowmen, adding some gulams. So he's going to be a little bit more on the defensive side. Plus, as Cow is checking my math, I'm pretty sure that is 39. Oh my God. Guys, I went to medical school. Can you believe it? The crossbowmen and the gulams are going to be a little bit more of defensive bonuses. And Eliona, because of that mobility, he's going to look and try to strike.
And honestly, I feel like the striking that needs to be done is quite heavy for this to actually matter. Because the amount of replacement you can do on your villagers is insane. And it's so quick to do so. But with farms, it's going to make a slight difference here. But that is a very heavy amount of lance accounts. And we can see the archers now coming through. It's going to be great, but against gulams, they're going to be quite hard to deal with. Now, we do see the camels here escorting the crossbows. Camels trying to do some damage here, but this is not a favorable fight for Baltoon. He probably doesn't want to take this as much, and these lancers are going to get right on top of these crossbows. Scout going down for Baltoon as well. The scouts of today, they were not meant to live.
No, I mean, they kind of did their due diligence, and I would actually argue that maybe a scout isn't even necessary to figure out what the Abbasid dynasty is going to do at this point. A lot of these lancers end up getting cleaned up. I thought it was interesting that Eliona chose to use a cavalry unit because of the Abbasid getting your 2 camel riders for free in the military wing. So it was curious for me to see him doing that. But now he's going to add some archers on the back end to try to do something against these crossbowmen. But honestly, I really like Baltoon's composition a lot better.
Yeah, they definitely look like they're able to take on a little bit more. Those gulams are way cheaper. Lancers are just eating up every bit of gold from you. And Aliona doesn't have a lot. We see 600, or almost 700 gold per minute now. And it's good, but your lancers are going to cost everything. Well, Baltoon, he's producing crossbows, he's producing gulams, and he's still doing it actively without too much more investment. Now, this is going to be not a game-winning push early on, but look at that food. We see here that Aliona is still on those pocket resources. What does the farm transition look like, Al? Let's go check that base. It's slowly coming online, but it's much later than Baltoon. So it does feel like Baltoon is going to be able to sustain and remake an army much better than Aliona might.
And I think that was the difference of going Lancers and not, right? Because Lancers are pretty expensive, right? So you need a lot of villagers on those outside food resources to try to gobble them up and get as much as you can. So that farm transition ended up being a little bit delayed, and I don't think those Lancers ended up paying off. On the flip side, Baltoon just going with some crossbowmen and some Ghulams, which are a little bit cheaper, and that's going to help him. Now with Eliona going with archers, obviously they are veteran archers, and I would imagine he has the composite bows on all of those archers. With how many Ghulams, though, that the Abbasid dynasty is able to pump out with having about 120 villagers, I don't know if there's enough archers to really deal with the problem.
It feels like the push that they're going to need to do is going to have to kill 2 TCs for this to actually leave a message. But I don't know if they're going to be able to do a push this early in the game that can do that type of damage. We do see those wham walls not going up here, and Baltoon needs to wall another day. The boys are in the back of the base, and it looks like Baltoon is going to go chase them down. He doesn't want Lancers back here in his base. They are actually going to be quite difficult to deal with once they get in there, because your units are not as mobile as your opponents.
Yeah, I mean, heads up play from Baltoon and keeping his military where it actually was, right? I mean, just making sure that you had areas that you thought could have been raidable, you thought weren't that defensive, and then you just park your units there, and it ends up helping you out. Military counts, populations in general, are pretty even between the both, 130 villagers almost between both sides. And then you get to a point where is there an overboom kind of thing because of how much villagers you have. But with that 130, you're going to be able to continuously produce military when they start going down. And then we have a slugfest. In the middle of the map, because of all the walls that are around, you're going to see these units just butt heads at each other. And which army composition ends up being supreme now? Baltoon does have a lot of Ghulams, and he does have Spearmen to try to help him with some of those Lancers. And the crossbowmen from Baltoon are going to be able to cut through a lot of damage that's over here, even the Horsemen. So you can see that Horseman flank over there on the eastern front. The Ghulams, the Spearmen weren't there, trying to get on those crossbowmen to do a little bit of a surround. I'm not sure if there's enough Horsemen, plus with the reinforcements that are back there. Let's see if he can get those crossbowmen out of harm's way, and using that choke point also between the cliff and the woods might be a good bet for him as well, so those Horsemen can't get around.
And you can see this replacement value of Baltoon. We see 2,300 food per minute versus 1,500. It is showing. He's going to be able to remake everything. Well, Yona is spending every bit of food he can. You see he's on 30 food right now. This man knows I cannot keep producing, and that's just because of a later farm transition. So even though most of these units might go down, Baltoon is able to replace them. And he's staying very, very close to 200 pop. With 22 Ghulams on the way, these are just the crossbows at the front, and they do need to back off for a bit, but for how long? Until the next wave arrives. Now, we can see both of them stop making villages at this point, and every villager that is killed, they'll just be able to remake it if they even wanted to. But finding the resources, that's going to be the question mark from here on out. Do you have another gold? Do you have enough wood? Where are you going to get raided at that point? And look at that farm transition that is going to slow him down. Gold has just been depleted, and his next gold is going to be quite far out.
Yeah, he definitely was a little bottlenecked on the food department. As Baltoon trying to get a keep on this big gold closer to Eliona's starting town center. There were only villagers there on the mill. That is so heads up from Baltoon. He's looking to see, hey, where are some of the biggest resource nodes that my opponent can take? And he's going to deny them. So for him, Baltoon, it's not necessarily, I mean, obviously he has a lot of units and he's trying to push in to Eliona's base. But once you get to this point, it's more of a starvation tactic, right? It's going to force Eliona, if he wants to go out to get some of that gold, he's going to have to fight through a keep. He's going to have to fight through a lot of things in order to get it. So then it begs the question, does Eliona even do that at all? Or do you start doing things like trade? Baltoon, going up to Imperial Age, obviously first. Looks like Eliona did not get the agriculture technology with all of the farms that he has. And Baltoon's been sitting on that for a long time with 3,500 food per minute. It's absolutely unbelievable what the Beastyqt could do in terms of booming, because they have so many economic advantages that stack on each other. Even with things like House of Wisdom too. This entire army from Baltoon could evaporate And I don't think he cares.
Yeah, the problem is for Baltoon, he doesn't want to fight this right now. But honestly, he could. He could. He could take the fight and replace his whole army in that time. Baltoon had the foresight to know, hey, the battle for this map is going to be around the resources. He got that stone. He instantly went ahead and started building keeps. So Baltoon wants to get that age up and then push. Alyona also now on 200 pop, but that Imperial Age is going to take a lot of time to kick in. So Baltoon probably just wants to age up and get those upgrades as quickly as possible. But we do see another key play here at the front, knowing that this is going to be a very important goal for him. Alyona is making this play, and he's most likely going to try and engage it right after that age up kicks in, which is going to be any second now.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see if Baltoon is going to end up dealing with this. I think he's going to let the keep go up. He definitely wants Imperial Age. He definitely wants those upgrades. Getting Preservation of Knowledge, especially when you are trying to get these elite upgrades, is pretty crazy, honestly. So making sure that these get a lot cheaper is very helpful. So the keep's going to go up, and then it begs the question, what you want to do about it, right? You could do things like make Trebs because they have a lot of range. You could do things like, because you're Imperial Age, you can make Bombards. You can make Culverins, actually, is what the Abyssids have for their gunpowder anti-building unit. So we'll see if he's going to be able to. These technologies not quite in yet for him. Those Imperial Age Gulams not quite there. The crossbowman will go in probably in a little bit once he takes this battle. But this could mean all the battle that he necessarily needs because of how much he has stockpiled. He has so much food that all of these Gulams might be getting picked apart by crossbowmen, but where one goes down, two pop out in their place.
Yeah, the problem is, even though Alyona is starred for gold, he's got 4,000 in the bank. So if Baltoon takes this down, Alyona is still going to have one full army and upgrades to handle. So while not being completely over, it's looking that way because Baltoon has just pushed through. Those are idle villages in that keep, and it doesn't look like he has any resources here at the back to actually respond to this. Baltoon doesn't mind. He's pushing through. His gold income looking a little bit scary at the moment on the score here, but we can see it's 2,000 gold per minute, so he doesn't actually mind. Those upgrades starting to kick in these villages of Alyona, trying to get a little bit of wood, but these guys are in danger as Baltoon is running right through.
Yeah, those upgrades are super expensive, and they're going to take a little bit of time because they're Imperial Age. It's some of the best technologies that this game has to offer, so it's going to take a while Baltoon had a little bit of a head start. So he's dealing with a Castle Age military mass while his is Imperial, and going to continue to try to raid some villagers, take them down. He's getting elite army tactics, which is almost done, and those blacksmith technologies as well. And he's got those Imperial Age siege apparatuses. He's got some of those culverins to try to take down this keep, and it looks like it will be effective. Alyona making a change. So this is all about reacting to whatever army composition your opponent has, because you're spending a lot of time getting the Imperial Age, Gulams and crossbows and all that. So Alyona starts pumping out hand cannons, and that's going to be really effective against a lot of Gulams.
Now, you might get a bunch of hand cannons, but you need to have gold to sustain it. And this gold is very, very temporary. As we can see here, these villagers are desperately trying to repair this as well. The units don't even care about this. They're just walking right through villages, trying to stop this culverin now from making it all the way through. But Baltoon, the pump doesn't stop. He's just going straight for it. Those few hand cannoneers on the side of Alyona is not going to be able to sustain this. And Baltoon, he just looks to flood. You can see that keep at the top, villagers just trying to keep it alive, but look how that keep is surviving against this.
Well, I mean, this is starvation, right? I mean, Alyona tried to get a bunch of hand cannons, and he spent all of his gold doing so. Now he doesn't have any left. So technologies that he might want, Imperial Age technologies, if he wants to make a composition change, it's going to be incredibly challenging for him to do that. And Baltoon actually starting to add a little bit of food-heavy units because of how much food he's gathering per minute, and going with some camel archers, which could be effective, obviously providing unease there. But the Gulams, for how tanky they are, plus with elite army tactics, do me a favor, Cow. Click on one of those Gulams and tell me how much health it has. 259. Well, that one's dead. But 259 HP. So hand cannoneers got to rip through that. Obviously, with serpentine powder, it could be helpful. But again, Alyona can't research it. And now he's gone.
quickly going into the next series, Alyona took one off of Beasty's team and even out the score for MarineLord and Beastyqt. Now, Baltoon taking a very well-deserved victory here against Alyona, knowing how to starve his opponent and showing absolute dominance in the Abbasid versus Abbasid Mirror, which I thought was going to be an hour long. 24 minutes, shorter than most of our ranked games, and we just go 1 TC.
Yeah, I was this was a pretty early game.